I see multiple journalists on the horizon. Stand by. We came to this world to shape our future. We came to this world to reach the stars, to shape our future. We came to feel the need. You're surrounded by journalists. Hold your position.
TBPN. Today is Thursday, August 14th, 2025. We are live from the TBPN Ultra Dome, the Temple of Technology,
the Fortress of Finance,
the capital of capital. Jordy, why are you bearish today? Did you not see that a company named Bullish went public and the stock popped 85%?
top signal.
Why? Yes, gross margins are negative, but is that not a green flag? Is that not a good thing? What does AI have to say about negative gross margins? Is it that bad? Break it down for me.
I asked one of the smartest models in the world, ChatGPT 5. Negative gross margins are fine, right? We shouldn't worry about negative gross margin companies selling to negative gross margin companies, right? ChatGPT says no. Negative gross margins are generally not fine. And when you have one negative gross margin company selling to another, that's usually a flashing red flag rather than a don't worry situation.
Very rough.
If you can't clearly explain how gross margins will turn positive and the plan relies on we'll make it up in volume, that's not strategy. That's financial quicksand.
Financial quicksand. It does seem like they solved alignment by default with this. It's great that it's pushing back. During the Glazegate era, it would have been like, yeah, absolutely. Like,
well, they're not fine. They're not fine for most companies.
But you're built different. You're different. You're in the conversation. Anyway, if you want to fix your gross margins, if you want to dial in your finances, go to ramp.com. Time is money. Save both. Easy to use corporate cards, bill payments, accounting, and a whole lot more all in one place. Now, more important than ever, there is a weird trend shaping up, and it's a question that's on the top of my mind. It's a question that should be on the top of most venture capitalists' mind right now, I think. So the question is,
how losses?
How bad are AI startup unit economics? Also, good morning to the chat. Good morning, John Exley. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning,
Nicola,
everyone.
Matt, Techno Chief is here. We got Gold Rock.
A lot
in
of
the
big
chat.
dogs.
A lot of names. A lot of names I recognize. So
familiar
good to see
faces.
you guys.
Great to see you.
So here's an example of how the AI startup economy works right now. You, the user, the purchaser of the AI application, you pay a company, an application layer company, $1. Seems pretty like a good deal. You're getting a nice little tool for $1. Then let's trace what happens. That company, that application layer company, they go to a foundation model company. They give that company $5. Then that foundation model company goes to a hyperscaler. They give that hyperscaler for cloud hosting, they give them $7. And in turn, that hyperscaler goes to a GPU maker and they give them $13. And so it's giving House of Cards.
It's giving chained losses.
It's giving chain losses. But the question is, how fast can inference fall? If fixed performance inference falls at the
inference, come down.
Come down in price.
I need you to come down.
So if fixed performance inference falls at the rate of Moore's law, for those who have been living under a data center, is the idea that the cost of compute on a dollar per flop basis cuts in half every 2 years. It used to be every year to 18 months, and then it kind of stretched out, but we are still making gains in just more advanced semiconductors, better performance on a per dollar, per unit of energy cost. The chips are getting better, and that's happening every 2 years. But if fixed performance inference, like inference at a certain level of intelligence, is only getting cheaper by 50% every other year, that's probably not that great for your gross margins. Because if you're negative 500% gross margins, it's like, okay, in 2 years you're still going to be negative 250. Then you're going to be negative 125. It's going to take you a long time to kind of dig out of that hole. But there is cause for optimism. So algorithmic improvements in inference efficiency do seem to be moving quicker than Moore's law. We saw this with DeepSeek. DeepSeek R1, the reasoning model, is dramatically cheaper on a per million token basis than ChatGPT. And so we know it's possible. A lot of those algorithmic improvements are getting ported back to models right now. We see this with the Pareto Frontier, and all the labs are in incredible competition.
The rumor, by the way, is DeepSeek is planning to launch R2 on NVIDIA, the day of NVIDIA's earnings.
Really?
Probably just random.
Wait, how solid is this rumor? Like,
I wouldn't lean on it too hard, but I think it's a possibility.
Okay, so basically, we're getting the Moore's law improvements, like almost certainly. That's kind of just assumed to be true. There should be some algorithmic improvements that will end up, we should see cost of inference halving every 6 to 12 months, maybe 5 months on the really fast horizon. So I think we're not quite on a knife's edge here. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and we need to make sure that we're actually hitting all of those different algorithmic improvements as fast as possible.
Or just 5x prices.
Yeah, that is the question. Is that if you had told me,
and Gurley's point has broadly been, if you're selling, some application layer software at negative gross margins, you are effectively subsidizing demand and creating more demand than if you're just...
Which makes sense because these businesses often trade on a revenue multiple and revenue growth multiple. So revenue growth going from having the steepest line to the $100 million, that's the most important thing. People don't care. This is the shooting stars from
We were joking
Bessemer.
around earlier. You were saying...
Supernovas
there might
versus
be
shooting stars.
Well, no, you earlier today you were saying you were potentially interested in investing in some companies that don't have to pay for inference. Maybe software companies with little to no inference.
Maybe no inference cost.
Could be something there. Maybe traditional SaaS.
Traditional enterprise SaaS might be making a comeback.
There's been a yard sale in SaaS broadly.
Seriously. So
maybe there's something there.
I mean, it is a bull case if you're running a company that is growing but doesn't have upside down unit economics and is doing well on gross margins. You might, even if there is some sort of market correction or pullback, like you're going to be in a strong position. So certainly treat the R&D AI agent stuff that you bolt on as incremental, as experimental, see how it can improve your workflow, but you should make sure that the demand is actually there.
Somebody should build AI agents to help negative gross margin AI companies achieve positive unit economics.
I mean, at the same time, if you told me that as basically a prosumer, I would be paying $200 a month for ChatGPT and feeling that that's a steal, and I pay that bill happily, and even $250 for Google Gemini just to get access to VO, I'm happy with that one. I almost hit Grok 3 Ultra Pro plan, which is $300 a month yesterday, but I was like, I don't think I need Grok 4 Heavy as well, but I want to test these models. It's also kind of my job, but still, just the idea of spending $500 on effectively consumer software is somewhat remarkable. And so I do wonder what the elasticity of demand is, and if these AI companies that are selling AI-enabled SaaS products were to quintuple prices, what their churn would look like.
Yeah, you're also a coastal elite living in a bubble, in a technology bubble, and you'll happily pay hundreds of dollars a month.
Yeah, it is rare.
For leading edge models.
Just like I would pay hundreds of dollars a month for Restream because it's what
And we
powers
do.
this stream. One live stream, 30 plus destinations, multi-stream and reach your audience wherever they are. You can sign up for free at Restream.
And Restream lets us aggregate all the chats, so we see
Yeah, we see
chats
everything
from
on
X and YouTube.
But YouTube
and
sees to be
even
where it's
Substack.
at. I would recommend the YouTube chat. John Exley's there, greeting everyone, hanging
chat
out.
room general.
I recommend John Exley in the YouTube chat. But we have our first guest of the show, live in person, Aaron Ginn. Let's bring him in from HydraHost. He's been on the show 3, 4, 5 times, too many times to count.
There
Welcome
he
to
is.
TBPN. Welcome to the Ultra Dome, Aaron. How you doing?
Bring it in.
Good to see you. Did you bring a present? What'd you bring?
Got a match the gong, man. Got to match the gong. The topic is China.
Take a seat. Take a seat. Tell us how you're doing. Tell us how long you're in town. And then I want to go through the NVIDIA H20 export ban. We have some pros and cons. We're going to debate it live on the show.
Yeah, I mean, we need to discuss the fortune.
Please.
In terms of like who is favored to win
Yes.
as well.
So you brought us some fortune cookies.
Yeah,
What's the
brought-
story on the fortune cookies?
Well, actually, the fortune cookie is, so I'm Hapa. It's called half Asian Pacific Islanders. It's actually not Chinese at all. It's
Okay.
Fortune cookie started in San Francisco.
should we
bar food.
unbox and open one? See
Yeah,
what
I
our
mean-
fortune is for the show?
Yeah, see,
big
we should
moment.
see who is actually going to win this AI war.
Yes,
so,
yes. Let's open some
Are these
fortune
rigged, by the
cookies.
way?
these no, I wish they were funny ones. No,
You
they're
can
not
get
fun.
those.
my-
There's a company that sells ads in fortune cookies, so they give
Oh,
the
yeah,
fortune
yeah.
cookies away for free. But then when you open the fortune cookie, you get an ad. So I am opening my fortune cookie. It says, "Your careful nature will bring you financial success." I think that's pretty accurate. Jordy, wasn't I just talking about this? We need to
Read it again.
We need to
Read it
dial
again.
back the capex at TBPN. Your careful nature will bring you financial success. What was I telling you earlier? I was telling you. We need
Less
to dial back the
capex,
capex,
less H100s.
less supercars.
We don't
Let's
need
hold
that.
off on the next
we don't
round
need
of
that
supercars.
incremental rack. Right,
Exactly,
of
exactly.
GPUs. You are next in line for promotion. Wow.
Okay, that
Well,
one
we
seems
have
a little
a
bit more
pretty- we have a
general.
pretty
And mine
flat
is,
org
you
chart
get?
here.
Gold is in your. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. My dad came out there for a second. Gold is in your future.
Gold
the-
is
There
in
we
your
go.
future.
There we go.
Maybe Jensen will get you a gold-plated rack. He used to
Yeah.
do that, right? He used to deliver gold-plated racks to all the
Yeah,
different
I
labs.
think Sam has like probably 20 of those, right?
Sam has 20 of
Yeah,
those.
yeah.
Insane.
And then whenever you need to talk about China, you can just pull out these whenever you want.
We do
So-
need some different.
I know.
hats.
I know. Jordy loves the hats.
is-
Wow,
the
these are
hats
cool.
are
These
really-
are cool. These,
Yes.
I might actually take this home for the weekend.
This is a pretty sweet hat. I like this.
Me and my dad has one. That's what he uses to garden in. So
Okay.
I mean, it's highly practical, highly functional.
it is right.
It does
Yeah,
seem
yeah.
to be creating some sort of echo in my ears, but I'm down. It looks. It's
thank you
actually
for the
terrible
gift.
for the lighting. We need a whole new set of cinematography lights in here if we're gonna make this work. Anyway, good to have you in the studio. We've been talking about H20s. We talked to you about the export ban on Monday, but I wanted to run through kind of now that the story has developed a little bit more. Most recently, the Financial Times reported Beijing presses local chips on tech giants.
Yeah.
Alibaba and ByteDance are told to justify orders for U.S.-made semiconductors. So I want to run through all of the pros and cons of an export ban, and we've written some on the whiteboard. And so if you two can go to the whiteboard, we can run through these each one at a time and try and get your reaction to them step by step. Okay. So let's start with the case for allowing exports of NVIDIA H20s to China. So the first pro camp, if I want NVIDIA to be allowed to export H20s, is it will increase China's dependency on the United States. Aaron, do you agree with that? Is that a good reason to allow exports? Okay, why?
America always wins when we excel at soft power.
How does it increase soft power? Like,
The fact
walk
is,
me
like,
through that.
Because the way that the architecture actually works, it's not just a hunk of metal.
Okay.
That's what people assume.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of software and as well as Jensen is pushing this with the next direction with Grace and Rubin and basically ARM. So the future direction of GPUs is essentially like NVIDIA is an Apple-like software platform.
Okay.
So that's why.
But aren't they completely fixated on making sure they aren't dependent on NVIDIA generally, right?
But the only way to do that is to build off of NVIDIA
And they're doing that.
with Huawei.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we need more there.
So if we export, we hurt Huawei.
Yes. Yeah,
essentially.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
Take
about,
money from them.
What
give it
about
to
just
us.
the libertarian free market capitalism
Potentially
argument?
underrated.
Potentially underrated. Like,
Oh, yeah,
should the U.S. government control exports broadly? Where should they draw the line? The famous example is like, you make an F-35, we're not going to let you sell that to a near-peer adversary. But why aren't GPUs in that category?
Because you could have a GPU in here and it's not going to launch and kill somebody. So, as well as the past Biden AI diffusion rule, you could have an F-35, you could not have an Hopper. So there's not a consistency in the theory of the so-called expert class.
Yeah.
So much so that, so much so that I think there was 78 or 77 F-35s sold to Portugal.
Okay.
But Portugal was on the ban list or the bad boy list.
Oh, interesting. How'd that happen? It just
I literally asked the people author, and they're like, "We didn't know they were on the list." So it's over exaggeration of that's why it's the purity test of well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And the reality is we can be reasonable about this and say that if the goal is to create dependency on the U.S. because I like less war, I know I like less people going to war. And if we can increase China dependency on our platforms, therefore less likely to go to war with Taiwan.
Okay.
And that's kind of the idea, and we actually can be very successful at that because we're really good at being platforms.
Okay, what about the case for just pumping our bags? Lots of people are long NVIDIA right now. It's the largest company in America, largest company in the world, $4 trillion.
Well beyond.
Well beyond $4 trillion now?
Isn't it like 4.4?
Yeah, I think something like that. Yeah.
They added another 400 billion in market cap without me even paying attention. How good is the export? Allowing H20 exports for NVIDIA? It feels like they already took a write down.
Yeah.
Is this actually a material piece of their business? Is this important to NVIDIA shareholders?
It probably have a very minimal impact. If not, it's barely anything.
Yeah. What about this idea? I was talking to somebody who was very anti NVIDIA exporting to China just because of. There's no reason to because there's plenty of GPU demand in the United States. So NVIDIA could essentially sell 100% of the chips that they fab at TSMC to American companies. So anything that they sell to China is just pulling away from American GPU demand. It's making American GPU farms more GPU poor. Has
that dude ever talked to anyone outside of America?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, because they would say we're not interested in that.
Wait, why not?
So if you talk to anyone who's one is that most of this technology, cool, it's fun. Y'all use the AI to edit videos, use ChatGPT to search. The way at which AI is viewed by everyone outside of America is basically inherently connected to the sovereignty of the nation.
Sure.
Go telling Saudi Arabia hey, just give that stuff to Bezos. And
Yeah,
he's gonna be
no.
nah.
I just mean there's that famous story of Larry Ellison and Elon Musk sitting down at dinner with Jensen Huang and saying, Jensen, we will pay any amount of money, give us as many GPUs as you can possibly give us. We need 100,000 H100s. We need as many as we can. We're trying to build superclusters. Any excess capacity, any excess supply you have, we will soak up for sure.
Yeah.
And so isn't there a decent argument just for, hey, American companies should be at the top of the buyers list for what American companies produce?
But they are right now. But the real thing is that if you assume this, which is what Jensen's doing, he's basically pushing everyone to him. He is the Apple of Silicon.
Yep.
Are there Apple stores in other countries?
Yes, but iPhones. But if iPhones were out of stock in New York City. Someone would make the argument that Apple should prioritize fulfilling orders in America before they expanded internationally.
I know. I think NVIDIA does that because NVIDIA is an American company, but at the same time,
every H20 could have been an H100, correct?
No,
it's the same line time at TSMC.
Because one is that you have to remember, NVIDIA is a foundryless organization. it has 700 or 70 billion in free cash flow last quarter.
Yep.
So its capex is, I think, a couple $1 billion.
Yeah.
So you can't just go to your supplier and be hey, just do this. That's not the way foundries work.
Because TSMC is also fabbing for Apple and Google with TPU.
NVIDIA is the bulk of that,
Okay.
but as well as they removed all the H20 from the production line, and most of what is remaining is what's in the inventory. And as well as people conflate constantly, especially with these NVIDIA bears, where they assume that NVIDIA is actually making the lithography, assuming that they're the ones that control the 4 nanometer process.
Yeah.
They're not. Like they hire someone else to do that. That's
Yeah.
what I said last
You
time.
want to put this on while you're playing the bear?
Don't
I
do
was
it.
gonna get a panda, man. I was gonna get a panda vest.
Panda head. If you put that on, you will not be able to see anything.
Can you even hear me?
But he's not
NVIDIA
bearish.
bear
He's
here.
bullish. He's playing.
Just role playing.
Yeah.
Role play. Yeah, I mean we're in Hollywooder. So
Yeah. You can just throw it down.
Yeah, but the most of the NVIDIA bears they don't understand the segmentation of actually how the space is made.
Yeah.
2, they underappreciate the platform that is associated with NVIDIA. And
Yeah.
3, go look at the list of the superintelligence team.
Okay.
You know,
Am I hearing you correctly when you're saying NVIDIA instead of NVIDIA? Is that correct?
It's like NVIDIA.
Okay. Just wondering if there's like a pronunciation that I'm getting wrong.
Yeah.
Visibility and leverage. One of the reasons we want to be able to export to China is that it gives us more visibility into where the chips actually end up. Whereas if there's a diversion regime where they're all going to Malaysia and then flying wherever, they could be going to North Korea. Whereas at least if we are licensing to send them to China, we know it's going to Alibaba, it's going to ByteDance, and that's not the worst possible place that they could go.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's reasonable.
Is that a reasonable argument?
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about just 15% for the big guy, Uncle Sam? Is that a good reason to export?
The funny thing is, you remember the Biden thing, right?
What was that?
Remember the Biden?
No.
The Ukraine, it's called the big guy, leave aside for the big guy.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
The backdoor payments.
Okay, so this is as American as apple
That's where I
pie.
got that. That's where I got that.
Oh,
okay.
okay. So it's homage to Biden, right?
Okay.
Well, if he was sentient, he would be appreciated.
Shots fired.
So so export taxes are illegal by the Constitution. And that's an immutable fact.
Yep.
In some respects, like I'm very happy about reshoring to our shores. I'm very happy all this. This is voluntary as far as I could find out, completely voluntary.
Yep.
He's not going to increase the price to China. I think that's what some
Yeah.
people have been saying, that it's like, as if it's just weird. Like some of the NVIDIA hawks or AI doomers are like, well, now NVIDIA is going to be more expensive than Huawei. I mean, 1, Huawei is already cheaper.
Yep.
But 2, like now you want NVIDIA to make more money.
Is Huawei
like,
cheaper on a dollar per kilowatt basis, like unit energy?
No. For like NVIDIA or Huawei is
Per
cheaper
rack.
as like a whole
As a
holistic
rack.
solution.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
It's more expensive to run, but they don't care.
I mean, I heard a take from Dylan Patel at Semi-Analysis that with this 15% tax, the H20 is already less profitable than the H100, and so this could potentially put them in the nightmare scenario of having similar gross margins to AMD. Because AMD is way lower. So I think they will be fine.
They'll be fine.
So maybe that's a good reason. It does seem like tariff revenue is going through the roof for the United States, and
like 300 billion is projection or something like that.
Yeah. Like it does seem like money is flowing into the government at some level that's higher than previous years.
And so far the way that
Check the PPI though, brother.
so far it's not really coming from our pocket, right? So about 80% is being absorbed by companies.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Sustain chip leadership. If we export the H20 to China, this allows this puts more dollars in American companies' pockets to fuel future versions of CUDA, future learning curve step downs in chip dominance, and it will ultimately unlock the American ability to produce the 1 nanometer chip, the 0 nanometer chip, the -1 nanometer, the -1 nanometer chip, which is what we're all hoping for to bring down these
First
inference
come
costs.
negative gross margins, then negative nanometer chips.
That's the future.
Something there.
That's the future.
This is, I think it's indifferent to NVIDIA. I think this matters more to like the indie cards. So the Groks, the Positrons, the Etches of the world, AMDs. Like I would apply that to there, but in terms of because people forget that every rule that applies to NVIDIA applies to them too.
Yeah.
And cutting off half of all AI developers.
Okay.
To NVIDIA, like I think it would have, like I said earlier about profit side. I think it's kind of a
2%
moot.
or
Yeah.
something,
But to an AMD, could be a much bigger deal.
Okay. You mentioned the new chip companies, Etched, Cerebrus, Grok, etc.
Yeah, Positron,
Do any of those chips I mean, I imagine that they all fall under the chip restrictions because they were never designed to be nerfed.
Correct.
But if the nerf is around like memory, some of them don't even do HBM, or for example. So are any of them sneaking through currently? Do you have any insight into what's going on with those new chip companies and exports?
I mean, as far as I know, every deployment I've heard about with the Indy cards, they all required an export license.
An export license?
Yeah,
okay. So they might be paying 15% going forward.
Maybe.
Possibly.
I think
We'll see.
I think this really applies to the
NVIDIA
but again,
yeah.
this is where going back to I am a free marketer where
Yep.
I give props to the president for
Yep.
being creative. At the same
Yep.
time, it does open up weird doors, right?
Okay.
So-
What about this idea that it forces China to subsidize their domestic chip manufacturing supply chain more aggressively, and that takes money out of the pocket of the CCP because if they want to stay competitive, if they want to keep Huawei competitive, if they want to keep SMIC and SME competitive, they need to tax their population and spend more money to make those
But I think
chips
if you look at the
competitive.
history of China subsidizing various industries, it's gone fairly well for them. So I don't necessarily.
Yeah,
think
this
that
might
they're
be
gonna
marginal,
say-
but what's your take?
Yeah, generally speaking, the Chinese customer wants NVIDIA. They do not want Huawei, which is why the Financial Times is reporting as it
Yep.
is.
And it's purely because of CUDA or just pricing or everything?
It's because the goal of the CCP regime is stability, and NVIDIA introduces a new vector that they can't control, as well as like many of these rules. Like people have to understand that yes, the standing committee and the central committee has the ability to influence what the original governors do, but many of these things that are being reported are coming from the governors, and the governors have really China's very very federalized.
Okay, now we're in meme territory.
But
one
important.
of the important. So one of the benefits of exporting H20s to China is that they will become addicted to AI girlfriends and AI boyfriends, and this will hasten population collapse.
So in theory, we should give them as many chips as they want.
Yes, if AI is bad and AI will lead to an AI girlfriend
Is this yours?
apocalypse,
Was this yours?
I mean, this has been an ongoing discussion.
everyone's worried about this. Everyone's worried about this. This is on the timeline. So
Yeah.
if you think that deployment of a frontier AI is
Yeah,
bad for the
AI
population,
psychosis doomers, the
Yeah.
one-shot crowd should be heavily in favor of giving them
yes.
as many chips as we can
Imagine,
Props. Did not
imagine,
think of this.
imagine,
Props.
imagine.
Props, dude.
Xi Jinping is thinking about invading Taiwan. He fires up some H20s. He's like, "I've gotten to the frontier of warfare. I've discovered new warfare techniques."
Yeah.
And he's completely delusional. And everyone realizes that he's been one shot by AI psychosis, and it creates upheaval in the country, which would be net beneficial for America, maybe.
That is flipping around the doomers' argument back on their face.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that deserves maybe like a gong.
Hit the gong. Hit
Hit
the
it.
gong. Oh, a small one. Hit it big. Hit it. You gotta
Interesting
really
form.
whack
I
it.
don't know, that's how
Interesting
Americans
form.
like.
okay.
But it's like in
like a
Asian
s-
culture, it's more.
Oh,
of
it's
a,
more of a small one.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, more traditional form.
Okay. What about this last one? One of the benefits of exporting the H20 to China will be it will force China to invest in negative gross margin businesses.
Like
and
venture.
they will get over their skis and they will fund a whole bunch of companies with negative gross margins, and it will
They
They
trigger
can
a
create an
financial collapse.
incredible chain of losses with negative gross margin companies selling to negative gross margin companies and just destroying value.
Exactly. What about that?
Well, as a positive gross margin company, yes. They love doing stuff like that.
They do?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. They kind of
Actually,
built a house
you know
of
what?
cards. And,
I didn't know you had positive gross margins. Get out of here.
Yeah.
See ya.
How dare I
Leave.
make money?
How dare
How would you ever
you.
have an actual EBITDA?
How dare in this
yeah.
economy? How dare you?
Yeah, exactly.
How dare you? Let's flip over to the reasons for the ban. You're going to need to debunk these. But
I may
I
agree
will
with
play. I will play the role of the pro H20 ban. Let's keep
hawk.
keep
Yeah.
H20s in America.
Coogan the Hawk.
And the first, the faux hawk. I'll style my hair in a faux hawk. The true China hawk who wants to ban NVIDIA H20s would say that by exporting, we will wind up with increased capabilities for China. We want to keep AI. We want to keep anything that is valuable to their economy, valuable to their military capabilities, anything like that, out of their hands. Why should I not be worried about that?
I think it's one that the fact of going back to what Jensen said, which is accurate, that over half of the superintelligence team is actually Chinese nationals, and then add in the people who are Chinese descent, it's like 75%. So we can't really control that.
Okay.
Math is universal, right?
Yes.
Like engineering is universal. So saying that it's like saying we're gonna really control the way French make croissants, and we're
Yes.
gonna really get after them and
So,
say
I mean,
you cannot use that much butter.
Let me
right?
let me steel
It's
man
like,
this more. Let me steel
okay,
man this more because
play.
yeah, math is universal. E equals mc squared is universal,
Yep.
or basic physics is the rocket science is universal, and yet we might not want to export rocket motors, because then you can just build up extra capability. There is a difference between having the weights of a model and being able to inference it 1 trillion times a day across your entire population. That might be a strategic advantage.
Yeah. Like, again, I go back to the fact of that China's going to China, and there are very limited things we actually can do, and the things we can do, going back to this idea of like we can make them more dependent.
Sure.
Right, because
Gives
one of
more
the
leverage.
things I believe about trade, one of the things I believe about free markets is like as a universal, I'm against war. I think conflict is bad.
I agree.
And at times it's just war theory, and but when you kind of just hyper focus on this, you overextend what we think we actually can do, and this is where America as the
But the China hawks are going to say,
this'll-
you know, have a potential conflict with Taiwan. They're going to
But
be
this
leveraging
decreases
drones.
that. This increases it. So that's the funny thing about all these China hawks things is like they're creating the scenario for war. Like all of these things, many of them we can control, many of them we can't, and then we
But
overexert ourselves.
let's say they are gearing up to try to take Taiwan. Don't we want them to have less compute?
No, this basically increasing the dependency on us decreases the
But
likelihood.
do we
I know,
have
but
any
my
leverage
my
after
argument
they
is
get
that
the
ultimately
H-20s?
they're already focused on decreasing their dependency on American companies, Taiwan itself. It's already happening.
No. I think you're overestimating the power the Central Committee actually has, and two, many of these things you have to delineate between what is bloviating and propaganda and actual reality. The Chinese companies operate very differently than what actually happens in the committee. So it's yes, the committee has a lot of power. But it's more of like structured socialism than it is communism. That all of the ingenuity around DeepSeek came from just Chinese engineers trying something.
Yeah.
It was not the committee was like, go be better at this. And I think there's many things
Don't
in
make
this zone
mistakes.
where they think that we can impact it because we view it as a state by state actor action. When in reality, it's like almost like China's coming to y'all and saying, hey, you gotta do the less gong stuff. And he goes to the president. He goes, hey, Jordan and John, they hit the gong too much. And Trump's gonna be like,
They've already
"What?"
tried.
I was like, what am I gonna do about that, right? It's like John, Jordy, they're great, they're beautiful human beings, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's a
it's
little bit of
not-
dynamic in China that I think is maybe underrated, which is that even though Beijing is pressing Alibaba and ByteDance to not buy H20s, Alibaba and ByteDance are independent companies. They don't want to be GPU poor. They want NVIDIA chips.
Yeah,
correct?
like they'll placate. They'll
Of course, they'll
but-
be compliant, but if it was up to them, they would buy the best and they would buy the most.
And this is why leaning into our strengths,
Yep.
which is like we are the best at making chips.
Yep.
Let's draw them,
Yep.
create maybe a division in the ranks,
Yep.
right? Rather than just being like, ooh, China, right? It's like many of these are failed neocons, right? Who make up these kind of like reasons and excuses and got us into all these like wars that didn't go anywhere. But then you actually like read into, okay, so let's say we did all this stuff. It actually creates a scenario for war.
Yeah.
This actually creates a scenario for less war.
Yeah.
This creates a scenario of maybe division in the ranks.
Yep.
Right? Because we increase the dependency, we increase trade, and
Yep.
therefore lowers the threshold.
Yep.
But this creates isolation, which therefore increases the likelihood of an invasion of Taiwan.
What about the
Right.
risk of short-term leverage over China dependency over long-term independence? I'm thinking of that IP leakage point, the idea that maybe cloning the CUDA ecosystem.
Hate to break it to you, brother. The IP's leaking.
It is true that obviously they can get their hands on one H20, tear it down, reverse engineer it.
Sure.
But there might be gains to be had from running a true H20 cluster, the lessons that you learn from that, and then porting that back to Huawei Ascend clusters. And so, is there any risk of setting up a series of large H20 clusters that actually that actually accelerates Huawei?
So this is what's different about the Trump. One of the differences between Trump administration and Biden administration. Biden administration was actually not that focused on this because they basically targeted the ability to buy chips, but they didn't really have as much restrictions on the ability to make chips. Trump is targeting the ability to make chips and having less restrictions on the ability to buy because if you can't have the ability to make, it's like.
But NVIDIA has an R&D center in Shanghai.
Yeah, but they don't.
Yeah,
make
but
anything.
that's
right?
different than ASML and TSMC.
Correct.
And so what we're
I know,
not
but I
hearing
think
in
it's
the
important
news,
from an IP leakage standpoint. But I'm just saying it doesn't get solved by the ban, but it's happening regardless.
I mean, the software is made in America, but again, it's one is like most of that stuff is open source because again, it's a combination of hardware and software.
Yeah.
But the IP leakage you should be concerned about relates to foundry equipment. It does not relate to NVIDIA. That is a very, very low threshold.
like
of
Zeiss
concern.
and Trump, like those companies
yeah,
that make the mirrors that go inside the
EDA,
fabs.
like the EDA software stuff that just basically came out about, like that stuff relates to the ability. That's the IP leakage you should worry
And
about.
we're
like,
not seeing anything in the news about Trump moving on allowing ASML to send lithography
he went the
machines.
opposite direction of the Biden
He went the
administration.
opposite
Yeah.
direction. Okay.
So because if you control the ability to produce, then all this good stuff starts happening.
Sure.
But if you're like, which is what happened in the previous administration, was they inverted it. They thought that because as I said last time on your show, that they associate GPUs with AI doomerism.
Yep.
And if you remove the like AI is a god and we don't want a Chinese god, then all this stuff kind of just doesn't make any sense.
Okay, let's get into the meme ones.
meme
One of the reasons to ban exports of H20s to China is that it will result in higher employment for Chinese thumbnail artists. So Chinese thumbnail artists are obviously going to be put out of business by generative AI models. If your job is creating a ton of slop content on listicle websites, you're having a rough time with the rollout of GPT-5, of course. Right? And large language models. And so if we hobble the ability for China to run LLMs, that will result in higher employment for thumbnail artists. What about that?
I mean, China is not the lowest cost manufacturer or producer of content or any type of
that's a good point.
It's the Philippines, Malaysia, Mexico.
That's true. They actually do a lot
India.
of work in the factory that's less displaceable. They should be worried about robotics potentially.
Yes.
Humanoid robotics.
Yes,
And
but maybe that does where was that thing?
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. What about incentivizing AI researchers to leave so they can be GPU rich? You're a top AI researcher in China, and you can't get any H20s, and you're sick and
want the best
tired
in
of
the
working at
business.
a GPU poor company like Alibaba or ByteDance, and you say, you know what? I'm going to MSL. I'm going to Meta. I'm going to
Going to the big
OpenAI. I'm
leagues.
going to Anthropic. I'm hopping a
that
flight to
positive?
San Francisco.
Isn't that a pasta?
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's why we should ban it, because if they're GPU rich over there, they'll stay.
Oh,
But if
I
they're
see what you're
GPU
saying.
poor, they will say, Zuck is setting up 100,000 H100s and 10s. I want to train on that. I got to get
Yeah.
to Palo Alto.
Yeah, but as well as like Alibaba isn't going to pay them $100 million.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. It's like if it's independent.
But
it's
they both
independent.
have factors, right? And so if you keep the Chinese AI companies GPU poor, it will be an incentive for AI researchers to come to America.
I mean, it's
a good argument, right?
I mean, on the edges maybe.
But marginal.
Yeah. Like it requires lots of confounding factors that
yes.
make it an unpredictable sort of thing. But I mean, again, like I don't think the desire to be on the super intelligence team. I mean, would you want to go be on it for $1 billion? I mean, that sounds pretty nice, right? $1 billion cash out. So like,
happy right here.
You're happy right here. I don't know. I mean, look at the car outside. I don't know. $1 billion, right? But that is completely independent of GPU capacity.
Yeah.
So that's where this is much more of a. And actually, let me maybe inverse this argument, because I think a lot of the constraints as we've seen on the recent frontier models are heavily driven by talent. So if we keep the talent over there, and they're basically provide artificial constraints because we give them these things, then actually they're going to make more progress on making it more efficient and become more skilled at things that we're not skilled at.
Is there a risk that they go closed source and we're not actually able to port back the inference savings that we're seeing from DeepSeek?
No, because I think they're really. I mean, they don't care about open source. Like they're very clearly
They care about soft power.
Yes. And so that's why they're doing everything they're doing, which is kind of counter us. I'd say that China generally behaves as a very ingenious population. But in terms of they're much more reactive to us than we presuppose. But there's an innate desire in the population to have soft power. That's why they did the Belt and Road Initiative, and this is like basically their renewed effort. So I'd rather basically starve them of any capability to actually project power externally by creating an export nation, and that we can basically become the dominant export nation, and that we're like something like this is that in reality is that they just have millions and millions more engineers than we do. And so we want those people to come to America if they, basically want to betray the regime.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure they advance that IP. But if we continue to isolate them, that basically they're just going to make advancements, even though they are GPU poor, because that goes to an over protectionism on our side, where we create a more GPU slop because we have way more high performance computing and we just don't care to make it efficient.
Sure.
So I'd rather have that be to where all that stuff is just happening on our stuff. So in some respects, by giving them more, we actually decrease the incentive for them to make innovations because they actually will have more GPUs.
So this is the
Less incentive
solution.
to focus on efficiency.
This is the solution
And money.
to
Money
negative
does.
gross margins. This is what will save venture capital. It all comes back. Anyway, I want to go to a post that you put up. We can wrap up with the board. If you want to take that board and design it into a beautiful graphic, do it on Figma.com. Think bigger, build faster. Figma helps design and development teams build great products together, and you can get started for free. You posted, this is really a race between America and the world, and you have the generative AI startups ranking, OpenAI, DeepSeek, Anthropic, XAI. What was your takeaway from this chart of Gen AI startups?
That one. Yeah, I think China's obviously listed the most out of America. But I think one is that it's our ability as a nation to invest in stuff that we think is revolutionary and become, again, the default nation. We want to be the standard. We want to be the exporter. But in reality is that when have we ever seen a great wave of new infrastructure development that has occurred this fast that's international? So that goes back to, I don't know, whatever China shucking person that you were talking about.
Yeah.
That's where he does it. That's why I make a little bit of a jest of a joke of, has he talked to anyone who doesn't live in America?
Yeah.
Because we haven't ever seen that in Silicon Valley, to where there's a big motion in Silicon Valley to do this investment, social media, mobile, Web3, and what we see now is the fact of like all these countries are doing sovereign AI projects. That's where the roll-up effect, the ability for us to control this it's way more like Bitcoin, where it's something accessible to everybody. And that's what leaning in on that side is kind of accepting the escape velocity that we're in, versus the other side wants to live, I think, in a little bit of a fairy tale, being like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we control those things? It's like if you have children, you're like, well, wouldn't it be nice if you stop hitting your sister? And the kid's gonna be like, right? And it's like you can really only extend yourself so far when you are a world occupied by multiple free agents, multiple sovereign nations. And so I'd rather lean into our strengths where we can actually execute control.
Yeah.
The more that we are a platform, the more soft power we have, therefore I believe more peace and more prosperity, less starvation, greater things for humanity, and we can still control things.
Yeah.
But if we're in this other side where we think that we can just hit people with sticks, like they're just going to be like, all right, I don't want to play this game anymore.
Would you go further? Would you allow the export of the B200?
I think some version of Blackwell should be in there. I don't have much of opinion on how much nerfed it should be or anything like that.
Gavin Baker had a good post that you reposted. He said, any journalist describing NVIDIA H20 as an advanced chip is not a serious person. They're either ignorant or ideological. The H20 is circa 4 years behind the actually advanced B200 that NVIDIA sells to America and our allies. The B200 has 30x more compute, 2x the memory bandwidth, 2x the memory of the H20 sold in China, arguably 100x more usable compute. Selling H20s to China is good policy, as they are slightly 1.5x better than domestic Chinese accelerators. Selling the H20 thus effectively slows down the development of a robust domestic Chinese AI accelerator ecosystem, which would be good for China long term. In the event of conflict, we would simply stop selling H20s to China, and that would be, and they would be left with inferior domestic alternatives, and America would have a 5 to 6 year technology advantage advantage over those domestic alternatives. Conversely, if we do not sell the H-20 to China during peacetime, they would absolutely build effective domestic alternatives over time. These alternatives would almost certainly be less power efficient than NVIDIA. See the Huawei Cloud Matrix 384 with its super fast but power-hungry optical scale-up fabric. But China has way more power available for AI than the United States due to their embrace of solar. Selling H-20s to China during peacetime is also good for the world and America because it means their AI ecosystem is comparable to the American AI ecosystem, and we can easily adopt the impressive algorithmic innovation seen in their open source models like DeepSeek. And the world benefits from a robust Chinese open source ecosystem that remains well behind American closed source frontier models. The fact that the Chinese government is discouraging the use of H-20s in favor of domestic alternatives should tell a rational, dispassionate observer that all they need to know about which country benefits from the sale of H-20s in China.
Soft power.
My question is there something structural going on where China has to remain open source because of their position in the market?
Yeah, like I think what Gavin is reflecting, which is more of my disposition, is if we're going to make a strategic decision around, because we still want to be the dominant superpower in the world, we have to be realistic and pragmatic about where we are. Like the fact is that we have, I don't know how high is the debt, 30 trillion, right? And
it's negligible in the age of AGI. Once we get a fast takeoff,
Fast
it
takeoff
solves it.
fixes this.
If
we just grow GDP at 5,000% a year, we're fine.
Or just like fudge the numbers, right?
Works too.
If we're going to make a decision about any sort of policy trajectory, we have to understand like what we actually are. Like we generally have a quite hostile politics. We have many states that are essentially bankrupt, and we have a military that is still the strongest, but is kind of lacking on the asymmetric capabilities, which is why we have Anduril being created. So if we're going to say, hey, we're going to go to basically to soft war with somebody, we should really understand what's going on. And I think there's many people who occupy the China hawk policy who, like as Gavin said, who don't even understand this technology, or they commingle TSMC with NVIDIA. And so if they're constructing an argument based on bad priors, then it's really hard to take anything else they say seriously, because that's why I go back to the AI. If you remove the AI doomerism, many of the people who are China hawks are just actually AI doomers. They think that Terminator is coming, it's going to kill us all, we're just robots. Disproven.
Do you think that's the flow? I thought it might be the opposite. It's like you're a China hawk and you need to justify your policy, and so you wrap it in paper clipping.
Yeah, I mean, I can go like either way. I can see it going either way. But I just don't believe that. And if you have any, for example, the number of genes you have is like basically hundreds of thousands. The number of cells you have is in the billions. The number of neuron synapses you have is about 500 trillion. The number of basically spaces in the model that like OpenAI uses is 500 times less. Right. And even the fact of like the way that we construct LLMs today, if you did that in the human brain, that's called a seizure. Right. So like we have to realize that again, it doesn't mean
don't make mistakes and don't have a seizure.
Like it doesn't mean AI can be amazing. Like it doesn't mean any of these things. But it's very different than from intelligence. There's enough on the Kurzweil timelines. It's back on Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil makes this argument that the singularity will occur when the total amount of flops in computing is greater than the total amount of flops equivalent in the human brain, and we're orders of magnitude away from that. So you really have to within one human being, it will encompass all the computing power in that lifetime of 80-ish years a person lived than anything we have on planet Earth. So like just sit down and be humble, because when you humble, you can like basically appreciate because even the fact of like what the way LLMs work are very directive. But that's not even the way attention works and perception works. Like, do you recognize you're sitting in a chair? Like, do you feel that? but your body does, but your brain doesn't acknowledge it, right? So like even that differentiation between that, there is so much computing happen in your body that you're not even aware of, which makes us such an effective species. And LLMs, again, they're great. Like but you're overextending yourself to thinking that because you have all of this power and all this energy, being able to generate T-flops, that you're going to say like, oh, you're a person now, or you have sentience.
Yep.
And that's just not the way the brain works.
Yeah.
And that's not even the way intelligence works.
Yeah.
Like,
I like that. There's some. I think it's a Wilmanitis post where he's saying like when they invented the steam engine, there were people that were saying like the brain is just like a steam engine, and then when they invented the gasoline powered engine, they're like it's just like the human brain is just like a gas powered engine. And then when they invent the CPU, they're like the brain is just like a CPU and GPU. The brain is just like a GPU.
Yeah,
people want to like bring their current technology understanding into like the human.
And when we ask, go ahead.
Cars, 10 horsepower.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah,
there's
it's
10
the
horses
same
in
thing.
there. Yeah. and like one of the things I love about the brain so much is like it's very, for example, its ability to be plastic, right? Being able to mold itself, which LLMs can't do. Because they see novel information and they basically just like, whoa, right? They kind of like freak out. But even how we understand neuromodulators like acetylcholine, dopamine, like norepinephrine, even though we understand that whenever you see something, you'll have kids, when you see your kids, your body releases these neuromodulators that creates basically attachments to synapses and forms memories. And the way that we even understand that cocktail, we just know it just gets released. We don't know the percentages. We have no freaking clue. And as well as like if I take your brain and then release it the same amount, right? Just like take electrons there and just boom, right? That you don't have the same effects, right? That how does directive focus impact cells? We have no idea. Like you can, for example, like hold this gong or hold that, right?
You're holding a Diet Coke.
Yeah, or even these two things, right?
We don't even know what's happening when you have a fridge cigarette.
How does like information affect this Diet Coke and this like translate from cell information to the fact of me delineating caffeine? And science has no clue like how that works, but we know it works. Yeah. And so
I expect podcasters to figure it out, right?
I mean, do y'all watch Tim Dillon?
Of course.
He has.
Jordy doesn't watch anything.
Yeah, he has a great thing on like podcasters.
Blank slate.
He's a blank slate.
Yes, exactly.
All the alpha.
Every show.
All the alpha.
I have a 3-hour context window.
It's true. Anyway, Aaron Ginn, thank you so much for stopping by.
Great to see you.
Yeah,
Great to see you. Thanks for coming in person. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about Vanta. Automate compliance, manage risk, prove trust continuously.
Cheers.
Vanta's trust management platform takes the manual work out of your security and compliance process and replaces it with continuous automation, whether you're pursuing your first framework or managing a complex program.
Let's take it over to Mark Gurman himself.
Mark Gurman.
He has some new reporting. Apple plots expansion into AI robots, home security, and smart displays. Apple Inc. is plotting its artificial intelligence comeback. Don't call it a comeback. Actually, you can call it a comeback. Give you.
I mean, it makes sense. They've gotten a lot of hate over the last few years for just particularly the rollout of Apple Intelligence. Very hyped. A lot of features on display at WWDC that didn't ship when the new iPhone launched. They sold the new iPhone against it. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that there were high expectations because of Apple's position with on-device inference being very cool.
I gave you Genmoji. Are you not entertained?
They shipped a few things. I think that I would love to see the Genmoji actual usage data, because I feel like even though it's not popular in Teapot and on X and in the Technorati, it might actually be seeing like decent adoption and joy. I mean, I've seen people share generative imagery from Microsoft Copilot, which I had no idea was a popular image generation platform whatsoever.
Facebook crowd.
Exactly. So I wouldn't be so sure that Genmoji is producing zero value. But at the same time, it's clearly been a tumultuous time for the company. They've been kind of on defense in terms of public relations. But Mark Gurman is still scooping every single day.
Apple is plotting its AI comeback with an ambitious slate of new devices, including robots, a lifelike version of Siri, a smart speaker with a display, and home security cameras. A tabletop robot that serves as a virtual companion targeted for 2027 is the centerpiece of the AI strategy, according to people with knowledge of the matter. The smart speaker with a display, meanwhile, is slated to arrive next year, part of a push into entry-level smart home products.
Entry-level.
Tabletop robot that's a virtual companion.
Yep.
That's big.
A lot of software they got to write to make that work. They got to get on graphite.dev. Code review for the age of AI. Graphite helps teams on GitHub ship higher quality software faster. Tim Cook, if you're listening, get on Graphite.
So this is
what do you
big too.
think?
Home security is seen as another big growth opportunity. New cameras will anchor an Apple security system that can automate household functions. The approach should help make Apple's product ecosystem stickier with consumers, said the people who asked not to be identified because the initiatives haven't been announced.
I mean, this seems like something that they could knock out of the park. Like just the smart thermostat, like these patterns have been defined for a decade, and that's like the sweet spot for Apple to come in and like the Sonos home speaker, where we were saying like they're like the everyone knows what they want out of a connected speaker system. They just want it at the level of Apple execution. It doesn't require going 0 to 1 in some new territory, and so I feel like they could be very successful in the home video monitoring, home thermostat, home speaker. So I think I like this overall. The robot is where it gets funny because this feels crazy, but I'll let you keep
going
reading.
into companionship feels interesting.
I don't think it's a companionship. I don't think of it like that at all.
A tabletop robot that serves as a virtual companion is the centerpiece of the AI strategy.
I mean, so let's read what the actual report is on this robot. The tabletop robot resembles an iPad mounted on a movable limb that can swivel and reposition itself to follow users in a room like a human head. It can turn toward a person who is speaking or summoning it and even seek to draw the attention of someone not facing it. The hope is to bring AI into life. I don't think of this as like companion necessarily. This could just be
Jarvis.
Assistant. Yeah, Jarvis.
Feels like
exactly.
Jarvis.
I mean, I guess Jarvis isn't a companion, but companion has a bad flavor to it right now, a bad vibe, because people are saying like, I married my companion, and that feels very Black Mirror. I do think that there's a serious Black Mirror risk, but I'll go into that in a second. But what were you about to say?
Yeah, I'm not going out and saying this feels like a competitor to Friend.com or any other players that are actually focused on companionship, but this does feel like giving Siri a presence in the home, like an always-on presence in the home.
It will be interesting to see how they solve it. A partnership with OpenAI or Anthropic seems logical, but Apple Siri partnership with OpenAI Anthropic before September on Polymarket is a 6% chance. By December, it's at a 44% chance, though. So, but this is a very low volume market, but still, it feels like we haven't seen a lot of messaging from Tim Cook that they're going to be building a huge data center, going to be training a foundation model. It feels like they're going to need to partner on some of the underlying infrastructure for that, because I would not want Siri hanging out in my kitchen talking to me. Like Siri is just not reliable enough, but I would welcome Claude or ChatGPT into my house. But I would treat it specifically as like an Alexa. What's the weather like? What's on my calendar? Look up the history of the Roman Empire. I would ask it questions like that, and I would use it as a knowledge retrieval tool. I might start to trust it in some agentic contexts.
And the question is, do we want a robot iPad with an arm swinging around your kitchen, and hopefully when you want to know the weather, you're within earshot? I think
this could be really cool. I think it could be really cool. I mean, they say FaceTime is going to be...
And it's just funny because you're competing. They're still competing with their own...
Yeah, but if you're ever in the kitchen, like this is an example. So FaceTime calls will be a key function of the device. During video conferencing, the display will be able to shift to lock on to people around a room. And so as you're walking around, the FaceTime is just following you. That actually feels more social. I remember during COVID, I bought... Facebook's camera. They had some sort of device that you would mount on your TV, and it would act as a video conferencing system. Yeah. And I used it a few times. I ultimately churned, but it had a really wide angle lens, and it would like zoom in on the people. It had really good face detection, and so it would center you no matter where you were in the room. But as soon as you walked to the other side of the room, it wouldn't be able to follow you because it didn't have any motors in it. And
guys,
I feel like
we
this
pull
could
up
be
the
interesting.
link in the chat?
The
this
Hallmark-
all reminds me of the Meta portal.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about, the portal. Yeah,
Basically,
that's the one I bought.
They didn't market it as a robot, but it
No,
would
it
sit
wasn't a
on a
robot.
table and it would sort of follow you
portal,
around
the
the
FP
room.
portal.
And Meta is no longer selling Metaportal. I guess they
Wow.
wound it down. So, anyways, Tim Cook
These are
told
great
employees
gifts.
in an all-hands...
I gifted some of these, and they were pretty well received. Most of them wound up being used as digital photo frames, though.
Yeah.
And they weren't actually used that often for calls. I don't know if putting it on a robotic arm is enough to make it useful. I think you do have to nail the underlying speech recognition and the conversational nature. Like, it has to be powered by a frontier LLM.
You know what's funny?
What?
Is I feel like the product, I could imagine them having a mood board internally with the Pixar lamp hopping around.
That's
right?
literally listed here as like one of their inspirations, apparently.
So Tim Cook told employees in an all-hands meeting this month that Apple must win in AI and hinted at the upcoming devices. The quote, the product pipeline, which I can't talk about. Thankfully, Mark Gurman has his moles in Apple that are talking. Tim Cook says, it's amazing, guys. It's amazing. Some of it you'll see soon. Some of it will come later, but there's a lot to see.
Yeah.
So Apple obviously always is cooking on moonshots. Very little of it surfaces to Mark Gurman, and even less actually surfaces, publicly via Apple's own channels.
Mark Gurman, if you have a little extra time, you should leak Julius's user numbers, because Julius has over 2 million users now. They're trusted by folks at Princeton, BCG, Zapier. What analysis do you want to run? It's the AI data analyst that works for you. Connect your data, ask questions in plain English, and get insights in seconds. No coding required.
We need to get our logo up there.
Yeah.
The fourth logo.
For sure.
There's a lot more.
So Apple is planning to put Siri at the center of the device operating system and give it a visual personality to make it feel lifelike. The approach, dubbed Bubbles, is vaguely reminiscent of Clippy, which we are super bullish on, and we think Microsoft should totally bring back Clippy, an animated paperclip from the 90s that served as a virtual assistant in Microsoft Office. Apple has tested making Siri look like an animated version of the Finder logo, the iconic smiley face representing the Mac's file management system. The final decision on its appearance hasn't been made, with designers considering ideas that veer closer to Memoji, the playful characters that represent Apple user accounts. Device prototypes use a roughly 7-inch horizontal display approaching the size of an iPad mini. The motorized arm can extend the display away from the base roughly half a foot in any direction. So that's not going to snap out.
I was really hoping at
7
least
feet
5.
across the room. It reaches across and pins you against the fridge. Yeah, I think Apple should be able to nail delivering this in a way that doesn't feel Black Mirror and dystopian.
Oh, that's funny. Sorry, I actually didn't see this, but there's a quote in here. Some people familiar with the product call it the Pixar lamp.
Yep, exactly. I think it could work really, really well. Now, they have to be cognizant of the Black Mirror
hop around,
vibes.
though?
That would be very cool.
Because that, if it could hop off
it can
my
definitely
kitchen
hop
table,
around. That's Nat Friedman core. This is doable with modern technology. But the risk is that they botch it because Apple's had a rough go with the recent marketing, and they've had a couple real backlashes. They had that one where they smashed all the pianos in the press. Do you remember this? So they had a huge hydraulic press, and they pressed an easel with paints and a bunch of paint buckets and pianos and violins and all this stuff.
Did they get a bunch of blowback?
They got a ton of blowback from this. We can try and pull it up. Do you remember this?
I remember that. People were saying that they're destroying these timeless pieces.
Yeah, and it's just the thing that
instruments and stuff like that.
Yeah, the thing that I love. You're literally you're destroying it for this particular. Shots fired. Bill Bishop from the Substack stream. You need better guests to talk about China and chips, not just NVIDIA partners who are regurgitating NVIDIA's talking points. Bill Bishop, get on the stream. Call in. We'd love to have you.
Bill,
you're welcome. Hop on.
Of course, Aaron is riding with Jensen.
Yeah, he is the Jensen surrogate. He's a surrogate for Jensen the juggler. He has to juggle both United States and NVIDIA and China's interest and Taiwan's interest and all of them.
Come on the show, Bill.
Miles Fisher wants to see the production team. He says, show the off-camera voices. Let's get the production team up on the screen.
So Bill, anyway, call into the show right now. We'll send you the Zoom link.
Yep. Call in. You're welcome. Can we pull up the Apple ad of them crushing the videos? Is that even available anymore? They might have just taken it off the internet. But there was...
I think I found it.
But there was...
This is it, right?
iPad, you get games, you get an arcade machine, you get an easel, you get a piano, you get all of those things.
At the
But
time,
it didn't do
Tor
well.
Myron said, our goal is always to celebrate the myriad of ways users express themselves and bring their ideas to life through iPad. We missed the mark with this video, and we're sorry. Absolutely brutal.
Well, really quickly, let me tell you about Profound. Get your brand mentioned on ChatGPT. Reach millions of consumers who are using AI to discover your new products and brands. Check out Profound. So the other ad that didn't go as viral and result in major backlash was the launch of the Apple Vision Pro. So when the Apple Vision Pro launched, one of the videos that they showed was of a middle-aged man looking at VR video of his kids, but he was alone in a dark room, and Ben Thompson was like, it feels like he's divorced or something, or maybe like the kids died.
Bachelor mode?
It felt like Minority Report, which is a movie I know you haven't seen. But in Minority Report, Tom Cruise's son goes missing from the pool one day, and he has a virtual 3D video that he plays back and gets very emotional about. And the imagery was very similar in the Apple Vision Pro, but it wasn't an optimistic scenario. It was like, yeah, like I guess if my son passed away or got kidnapped, like I would want to relive that, but that's not like going to inspire me to buy an Apple Vision Pro. And so with this like Pixar lamp, this robot in your kitchen or in your house, like I think they have to lean into light mode, not dark mode. They have to really be aware and reality check themselves on the Black Mirror effect, because the idea of someone hanging out in their kitchen, being lonely, and having this be the only companion that they ever talk to, that's a lot less fun than, hey, we're all cooking together in the kitchen and this is helping us keep track of the ingredients. Or my idea was teach it to pour some beers and get it at the fraternity. This thing needs to be tending bar at a frat house and inspiring dancing silhouettes like the original iPod commercial in order to be successful. Get the iRobot a stack of red Solo cups ASAP.
Apple's canceled for fraternity coded marketing.
I think that would be amazing.
Next.
If this thing could pour a beer without foam, I think they got a winner. Because it needs to inject itself into social. Even the iPod, like, yes, you could put it in the headphones and you could tune out the world and be that dancing silhouette during the iPod commercial. But also you could say, pass me the aux cord. I want to play a song from my iPod that everyone can enjoy. And it's a social experience. And so it's important to show both of those sides now more than ever. And in ChatGPT demos, in any AI product demo, there's always going to be the user who uses the product to be more isolating, but the marketing should always be aspirational and pro-social, just like social media. Social media, it's at its best when we're highlighting the fact that, like, I have so many friends that just send me a random Instagram reel every single day. And like, that's our interaction. And for me, it's a way to like check in with a friend and like
share a laugh.
Hey, share a laugh. And it's a heart and it's a laugh.
I can imagine the ad creative for the Apple Pixar lamp. You know, it's sitting on the center of a kitchen island. The family's hanging out, and they're FaceTiming somebody.
Exactly. Yeah. So one of the family members is out of town.
I can actually imagine us having a Pixar lamp here on the table.
Really, it's like, you want to be connecting two families or two sides of the family. The East Coast side of the family, the West Coast side of the family. They're both having Thanksgiving and they're able to connect, but everyone's being extremely social. Do not film this thing with the lonely person, having the Pixar lamp be the only thing to keep it company. Yeah. Anyway, that's my advice for Apple. What else is in here?
The projects coded Linwood and Glenwood. Core to the new home devices are current products like iPhones and iPads is an overhaul to the underpinnings of Siri. Engineers are working on a version code named Linwood with an entirely new brain built around LLMs, the foundation of Gen AI. The goal is to tap into personal data to fulfill queries, an ability that was delayed due to hiccups with the current version.
It should be able to do it.
Hopefully,
skill issue.
They should have a moonshot division just trying to solve iMessage search. They could probably start there.
Every tech company needs that. Amazon search is rough. Google Gmail search is rough. Their search has gotten so dominated.
There's $1 billion business in figuring out search.
I mean, that would be the killer. That might be a killer app for Comet and some of the browsers, is just like actually being able to search my Gmail inbox better. That would be pretty fantastic.
I feel like it should be at the app layer.
Anyway, whatever they're building products. They got to get on Linear. Linear is a purpose-built tool for planning and building products. Meet the system for modern software development, streamline issues, projects, and product roadmaps.
OpenAI is on Linear. Let's get Apple on Linear. Let's get the Siri team on Linear. They very well might be already. So somebody, Craig Federighi, who you all know, says the work we've done on this end-to-end revamp of Siri has given us the result we needed. He added that this has put us in a position to not just deliver what we announced, but to deliver a much bigger upgrade than we envisioned. He said there's no project people are taking more seriously, so that is very positive. A final decision hasn't been made on which models will be used, but Apple has been testing Anthropic PBC's Claude for this purpose. Mike Rockwell, the former Vision Pro chief who was put in charge of Siri earlier this year, is overseeing both the Linwood and Glenwood efforts. Apparently, so during the development of the tabletop robot, Apple engineers have made heavy use of ChatGPT and Google Gemini to build and test features. Within Apple AI and Siri teams as a whole, software developers are increasingly using third-party systems as part of their development process. Getting into a Ring competitor here, Apple is working on a camera codenamed J450 designed for home security, detecting people, and automating tasks. The device will be battery-powered and could last for several months to a year on a single charge.
Cool.
That's interesting. If they can do this for They can do this for a random home security camera. They can't do it for your iPhone. So they have. You're telling me they have the capability to have an always-on camera?
Put the tinfoil hat on.
We need a tinfoil hat. The device has facial recognition and infrared sensors to determine who is in a room. Apple believes users will place cameras throughout their home to help with automation. That can mean turning lights off when someone leaves a room or automatically playing music.
There you go.
So Apple, you're telling me that you can make a home security camera, of which I will purchase multiple and put them around my house, and it will be able to have a single battery that could last for several months to a year on a single charge, and you can't make an iPhone?
It's a little bit
that will
different.
last-
The screen's pretty bright. The screen's a problem.
bright,
Yeah,
but an
screen's a
always-on camera?
problem. Yeah,
How
I
long
know.
do you think your phone battery would last if you just constantly had the camera?
I
open?
actually think running the camera sensor is a lot less power intensive than running a screen, for sure.
And obviously a bunch of different applications.
So
But still,
yeah,
pretty powerful, pretty exciting
I don't
stuff.
think people want an always-on iPhone. They want the thrill of charging the iPhone every night. If you're an adrenaline junkie, there's nothing like being on 1% trying to fire off that last iMessage, trying to search
I actually had a
iMessage.
moment yesterday. My 1-year-old is starting to walk, and
Yep.
I had this moment yesterday where I'd filmed a video
Yep.
of her walking
Yep.
for about 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's in the house is like laughing, enjoying the moment, and then my battery died, and completely lost the video
didn't
because I
save.
didn't hit like end the
End.
video. So the
Wow.
battery died right in the middle of
Yeah.
this. Memory gone forever.
There is actually, that has something to do with the encoder. There is a certain file type that you can use when you're filming on one of these cameras that if the battery dies, it will actually save the last of the file. But there's certain codecs where if you don't hit finish recording, the whole thing will be corrupted. It's very annoying. Anyway, get on
Anyways.
Numeral HQ, sales tax on autopilot. Spend less
tax
than 5
AGI.
minutes per month on sales tax compliance. Tyler, what do you think about the Apple robot? Would you buy this thing? Would you do a challenge for it and then churn in 2 weeks?
That's most likely. I would say.
Yes.
Depends on how much it is. I'm like,
What have you adopted this summer that you still daily drive? You've churned from the Vision, you've churned from the VR headset, you've churned from Cluely.
my new phone.
Your phone, you have not gone back to the old phone.
That's
Extremely bullish for Apple.
Yeah.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it for new phones. You talk a lot of trash, Jordy, about, the latest iPhone doesn't have an all-day battery. Tyler's still using the latest and greatest phone. Still a good
There we
business. iPhone sales are ripping.
Well,
Apple still
in
got
other
it.
news, Emily Choi has announced we just closed the biggest deal in crypto history. Deribit is the #1 crypto options exchange by volume and open interest, and now it's officially part of Coinbase. So, of course, Coinbase just completed their $2.9 billion cash and stock acquisition of Deribit. This had been announced previously.
Yeah.
Deribit launched in 2016 and reportedly notched over $1 trillion in annual trading volume in 2024. So let's give it up for
Let's give it up.
big number.
In other crypto news, Bullish. But this is one of the greatest headlines I've ever seen
the
in the Wall Street
nominative
Journal.
determinism of
The
just
nominative
naming your-
determinism of Bullish. I don't know if you can see. Maybe I should just put it here. We need like the printer cam back. But the business and finance section of the Wall Street Journal says Bullish's IPO lives up to name. Price of crypto exchanges shares jump 84% on their first day of trading. Shares of Bullish soared in the IPO, highlighting the challenge of pricing an IPO in today's exuberant market. Just last month, shares of software company Figma jumped 250% in their debut. That prompted whispers about the risks of a company underpricing an IPO and potentially leaving billions of dollars on the table. The ideal first day gains are typically around 20 to 30%, many bankers who work on deals say. Bullish had a market capitalization of more than $13 billion as of Wednesday afternoon. Its stock, which trades under the symbol BLSH, was temporarily paused after it began trading. All eyes were on Bullish's debut, largely because the company is led by Tom Farley, the former president of the New York Stock Exchange.
Wow.
Farley in the role guided some of the biggest IPOs, including those of Alibaba and Snap. Bullish's debut was a chance for him to show his own ability to nail an IPO's pricing to both maximize for company proceeds, because when you're going public, you are selling stock. You want to sell it at the fair. It's a fundraising event. You want to sell it at the fairest price. If the stock pops, you could have sold a lot more potentially and gotten with the same amount of dilution, essentially. So they raised $1.1 billion. But because it jumped 84%, they could have raised $2 billion for the same dilution. And so that's in theory the problem here. And so, people kind of go back and forth, but it gets to this point.
But again, you're making a gamble, right?
Yep.
Even the Facebook IPO, didn't it decline?
Tanked. Yeah, it was like one of the worst IPOs in tech history. It was very, very rough, and it took over a year, I think, for them to build back up. But that was due to a few things. There was a technical error. There was mispricing. There was a lot of I think the numbers or something. There was like the mobile risk. There were a few different factors where people were like, oh, maybe this isn't the best, like a true compounder. I don't know. It was very odd in hindsight. But yes, this all goes to the point of how will individual investors react to public debuts, because if they go out and it's a hot company, it becomes a meme stock, or there's just too much latent demand, the stock will pop insanely. And so that's what a lot of companies that are going public are dealing with these days. But it's sort of a champagne problem, because it's good to have a high valued stock that you can go out and acquire
$11 billion public company now.
Yeah, it's great. Bin.ai, the number one AI agent for customer service. Number one in performance benchmarks, number one in competitive bake-offs, number one ranking on G2. You can get started for free.
Brad Pitt says his Ford versus Ferrari movie with Tom Cruise never happened because Cruise found out he would not be driving much in the movie.
I had no idea this is what happened.
We both wanted to drive. Tom realized that Shelby would not be driving much, so it didn't come through. Some lore.
Who wound up starring in Ford versus Ferrari? Who plays Shelby? I forget. It's someone else, right? Ford versus Ferrari. It's
Christian Bale. Right?
Christian Bale. That's right. Christian Bale and Matt Damon. Although Matt Damon does not play. Who does he play? Matt Damon, Ken Miles, Donald Frey. Anyway, ADIO, customer relationship magic. ADIO is an AI native CRM that builds, scales, and grows your company to the next level. You can get started for free at ADIO.
Well, in other news, OpenAI and Sam Altman are investing $250 million in Merge Labs at an $850 million valuation.
That's a big stake.
Financial Times is reporting.
Yeah.
So Sam Altman wants to put a chip in your brain. That's kind of.
I think everyone wants to put a chip in your brain.
Everyone, even Roy Lee, wants to put a chip in your brain.
Roy Lee wants to, and
have,
Mark Zuckerberg said that
options.
if you're not wearing Meta Ray-Bans, you'll be at a cognitive disability or something like that, didn't he say? Or cognitive disadvantage, because having AI on top.
Hope's Revenge said, "Good, I'm used to it."
This is great.
So the Financial Times.
Altman's co-founding the company. Wow.
Yeah, OpenAI and its co-founder, Sam Altman, are preparing to back a company that will compete with Elon Musk's Neuralink by connecting human brains with computers,
I'm sure
heightening the
Elon's gonna
rivalry
have a normal
between
one over this.
the two billionaire entrepreneurs. The new venture called Merge Labs is raising funds at $850 million, with much of the new capital expected to come from OpenAI's ventures team, according to 3 people with direct knowledge of the plans. Altman has encouraged the investment and will help launch the project alongside Alex Blania, who runs World, an eyeball scanning digital ID project, also backed by Sam Altman. Altman will co-found the company but not have a day-to-day role in the new project they added. Merge is one of a slate of young companies looking to take advantage of recent advances in artificial intelligence to build more useful BCIs. Its name comes from what many in Silicon Valley describe as the merge, a moment when humans and machines come together.
It's a good.
The Doomers are
Very
going to love this
sci-fi.
one.
I'm sure.
Altman wrote a lengthy blog post on the topic in 2017, speculating the moment would come as soon as 2025. This year, he suggested in another blog post that he could soon have high bandwidth brain-computer interfaces as a result of recent technological advances. I'm going to reference back to this blog post from Sam Altman called The Merge. He posted this 8 years ago on December 7th, 2017.
Yeah, read some of this.
A popular topic in Silicon Valley is talking about what year humans and machines will merge, or if not, what year humans will get surpassed by rapidly improving AI or a genetically enhanced species. Most guesses seem to be between 2025 and 2075. People used to call this the singularity. Now it feels uncomfortable and real enough that many seem to avoid naming it at all. Perhaps another reason people stopped using the word singularity is that it implies a single moment in time, and it now looks like the merge is going to be a gradual process, and gradual processes are hard to notice. I believe the merge has already started, and we are a few years in. Our phones control us and tell us what to do. Social media feeds determine how we feel. Search engines decide what we think. The algorithms that make all of this happen are no longer understood by any one person. They optimize for what their creators tell them to optimize for, but in ways that no human could figure out. They are what today seems like sophisticated AI and tomorrow will seem like child's play. And they're extremely effective, at least speaking for myself. I have a very hard time resisting what the algorithms want me to do. Until I made a real effort to combat it, I found myself getting extremely addicted to the internet. We are already in the phase of coevolution. The AIs effect and infect us, and then we improve the AI. We build more computing power to run the AI on it, and it figures out how to build even better chips. This probably cannot be stopped. As we have learned, scientific advancement eventually happens if the laws of physics do not prevent it. More important than that, unless we destroy ourselves first, superhuman AI is going to happen. Genetic enhancement is going to happen, and brain-machine interfaces are going to happen. It is a failure of human imagination and human arrogance to assume that we will never build things smarter than ourselves. Our self-worth is so based on our intelligence that we believe it must be singular and not slightly higher than all the other animals on a continuum. Perhaps the AI will feel the same way and note that differences between us and bonobos are barely worth discussing. The merge can take a lot of forms. We could plug electrodes into our brains, or we could all just become really close friends with a chatbot.
Wow. 8 years ago he said that?
8 years ago.
That's crazy.
ChatGPT, of course,
Wouldn't
exist for years, but I think a merge is probably our best case scenario. If two different species both want the same thing and only one can have it, in this case, to be the dominant species on the planet and beyond, they are going to have a conflict. We should all want one team where all members care about the well-being of everyone else. Although the merge has already begun, it's going to get a lot weirder. We will be the first species ever to design our own descendants. My guess is that we can either be a biological bootloader for digital intelligence and then fade into an evolutionary tree branch, or we can figure out what a successful merge looks like. It's probably going to happen sooner than most people think. Hardware is improving at an exponential rate. The most surprising thing I've learned working on OpenAI is just how correlated increasing computing power and AI breakthroughs are, and the number of smart people working on AI is increasing exponentially as well. Double exponential functions get away from you fast. It would be good for the entire world to start taking this a lot more seriously now. Worldwide coordination doesn't happen quickly, and we need it for this.
That's a wild post. Is that still up, or did you have to go to the archive?
Still up.
Still up. Interesting. That's a hot take. Tyler, would you put a chip in your brain?
Yeah, I want 4.0 piped straight in.
Yeah, you're down?
I'd do it. Yeah.
You do it?
Sycophancy maxing.
Yeah.
Chat is not super into it. Gabe says he just wants salt and vinegar chips, not brain chips. John Exley says he's got to be honest. I don't think it's for me ever. I can already picture the contagion of peer pressure.
Yeah, reading that blog post made me want to touch some grass. We should actually get some grass here in the studio.
We should get some grass in the studio.
Or even on the
Grass patch
table.
back
Even
there.
touch
Okay.
Even on the
grass.
table, so we could just have one hand on the grass.
It relates a lot to this cold healing post. 2040 population distribution predictions. 90% brainless content zombies who are functionally illiterate cannot write a paragraph. 5% neo-Amish flip phone users. 5% elites and super elites at algorithmic war with each other to steer the 90% to their whims. And then Crab says, always has been. I think the case of the neo-Amish is fascinating because the Amish are doing fantastically. They have adopted flip phones, I believe, and they've adopted some technology, but in general, they've accumulated a lot of real estate. And they're
They're
all accounts
reproducing rapidly.
by all accounts they are flourishing. And so what's interesting is that the coastal elites have not gone to war with the Amish. They've not said like what they are doing is unacceptable and we must like
They're not
eradicate
threatened
them.
yet.
I don't know if they'll ever be threatened by it. I think they might be fine with it forever. I think everyone might be fine with it forever.
They
and so I
they
think
can
you
build,
do.
They can build barns like they're in a game of
Oh,
Fortnite.
and you're threatened. You're threatened by that.
I mean,
no,
if they can build a barn, what else could they build?
I think
quickly?
I think that like you, even though there will be.
You've seen the videos, right, of them like
Yeah.
assembling a barn in
It's
like
amazing.
12 hours.
Yeah.
It truly is some of the greatest human
grass touching you
activities
can
of
do.
all time.
The Amish population doubles every 20 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What
bullish.
Yeah,
Hey,
and isn't
chart that
America
out,
like
chart
not
that out,
doubling
Tyler.
ever?
Chart that out.
Yeah. Oh, that's a fast takeoff there. Yeah. Project the next 10,000 years. What will the Amish
Project, yeah,
population
Tyler,
be?
work on that. Work on
Amish
that.
general intelligence.
How many Amish people
Yeah.
will there be in 10,000 years if they keep doubling every 20 years? That's what I want to know. I bet it's a big number. Mark has a good one. He says AI equals Amish intelligence. How to build a barn in 20 hours. I love it. Thank you, Mark. This is so funny. But I think my takeaway is like so Sam is painting this picture of like you get left in the evolution tree and you get like dropped off and it's a dead end. I don't know that it's necessarily a dead end. Like you could like monkeys are still around. You could still just be a monkey and you could be an Amish and like the super intelligence brain computer merged people could go off and do their own thing and you could just be vibing as an Amish for thousands and thousands of years. Like there's not necessarily an incentive to eradicate
until the super
everyone.
intelligence comes and says, "Hey, I'm going to need you guys to come and ride SoulCycle bikes to power my data center."
I think that people are just people like animals. People are nice by default. Like the default state of most living things is not this like vicious battle to dominate everything constantly. Like yes, like the animal kingdom is extremely metal and there are insane battles constantly, but it doesn't
There's
need
nothing
to
more metal than
necessarily
the
be
animal
that
kingdom.
way. Yeah, I don't think it necessarily needs to be that way. I think the Amish can coexist. Tyler, do you have the final number? How many Amish people will there be in the year
In 10,000?
12,025? 12,025.
Yeah, so I think it'd be 1.3 times 10 to the 156.
Can you turn that into like words? Like, is it quintillion, octillion, septillion? I want to know.
Like
Convert
I mean,
it into
10 to the 156 is like.
Is that past a Google? I guess 10 to
yeah.
100. So there will be more than a Google Amish.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm rooting for the Amish.
Give
That's
it up for
great.
the Amish.
I think you got to go long Amish.
How do we make money on this?
Someone asked, what about the absent-minded destruction of parking lots? I don't get that. I'm confused. I don't know
Might be
about the
an
absent market.
Amish reference.
Are the Amish destroying parking lots? I think they're building parking lots for all those barns they're putting up. Anyway, the Amish are missing out on 8 sleep, or maybe that's a loophole that they can do. We should definitely get the Amish on 8 sleep. Get a Pod 5 if you're Amish and you're listening to the stream and you're in the chat right now. They got a 5-year warranty, 30-night risk-free trial, free returns, free shipping. So
That would be,
for the Amish,
imagine the
first thing you put in the barn, Pod 5.
they could imagine if we find out that the Amish can build barns so quickly because they've all been secretly sleeping on 8 sleeps.
Maybe that's the secret. Maybe that's the secret.
They got an Amish version from Mateo that's like cooled by the earth.
Ooh, the farm to table 8 sleep. That's nice. Taylor says, I for one welcome our Amish Borg overlords. And Gabe says, long Home Depot.
Yeah, long Home Depot.
Going long Home Depot to do the Amish shop at Home Depot, or do they chop their own trees down? I don't know. We need to do a deep dive on the Amish. Anyway, should we debate whether or not TV is dead? Are magazines dead? One of our strongest stands, Adam Faze, I believe he's a part of Faze Clan. Adam Faze said, Emily Sundberg asked me for my anonymous hot take, which I guess he immediately de-anonymized. On the state of media right now, I'll out myself because I don't think mine's that anonymous. Magazines are dead. TV is dead. Hollywood is dead. TBPN is more important than CNBC. Emily Sundberg is more important than Vanity Fair. Nick Fuentes is more important than Fox News. And X is unfortunately the center of the universe. Interesting take. Very spicy. Alex Heath from The Verge says half is true, half is not. We'll never know which half. And Max Tani says, I think you could make the argument that none of this is true. Yeah. Who knows? What is relevancy? What is importance? Who knows? All I know is we're having fun on this stream. We're having fun with you in the chat.
I just want to say you're keeping magazines in business, John.
I am. I mean, yeah. Oh, the newspaper's dead. Why do I read it every single day then?
Well, he didn't say the newspaper was dead.
No, the newspaper is Lindy. I
actually think true journalism is more important than ever.
As long as TBPN is alive, Hollywood cannot be dead because we are live from Hollywood, and we are joined by someone who is not far from Hollywood, Delian Asparouhov, partner at Founders Fund, co-founder of Varda Space. What can we do to second office for Varda? Let's move it to Hollywood. Hollywood is the new Silicon Valley.
Well, if they get tasked...
Not a lot of warehouse space?
Wait, think about this. So if you guys get tasked with a moon landing and we need to...
Oh, yeah. We got you covered. If you're going out for Series J and you need to, make a moon landing appear like it happened, we got the cameras for you. We're good.
But my, somewhat controversial take is the moon landing did happen.
Yeah.
The footage wasn't looking that good.
Oh.
And so they did live stream from Hollywood for the footage so that they had some sort of great sort of takes.
So both are true. That's great.
They had to reshoot it.
Reshoots happen all the time. I don't have a problem with it. I say let it happen.
Fair play.
Yeah. Anyway, what is new in your world? There's a bunch of stuff going on in DC. We can talk about chips in China. We can talk about, I want to talk about negative gross margins in AI companies, what's going on in venture. There's a bunch of stuff, but what's top of mind for you?
Why don't we start there?
Let's start there.
This is a fun one.
Okay,
because Delian has been getting,
notoriously
chirped at for years about margin profiles.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. We're
back to Everett, baby.
Yeah.
Hey, let's make it just an Everett.
Somebody tell Everett to come on right now.
Yeah,
and let's have the
link.
gross margins debate.
So here was my take to kick it off. Here's an example of how the AI startup economy works. I've anonymized the companies, but this was relayed to me in a group chat, and I believe it to be roughly true. You, the user, gives an application layer company $1. They turn around and give $5 to a foundation model company that gives $7 to a hyperscaler, who in turn gives $13 to a GPU maker, and it's giving House of Cards. And so the question is, how fast can inference costs fall? Are we so over? Will we solve this? Is Moore's Law enough to save us? What else needs to change? What's your take on negative gross margins in now software businesses and the end of zero fixed costs?
I saw this graph that was NVIDIA's free cash flow by quarter and their CapEx by quarter. The first was they spent, I think, and I forget if it was quarter yearly, maybe it was yearly, but they're spending something on the order of 4.5 sort of billion in sort of CapEx on sort of scale up of production lines. And their free cash flow is something on the order of 35, 40 sort of $1 billion. And so there's just something funnily ironic where you take the whole 2010s mantra of software is eating the world, marginal cost of distribution is zero, so your margins are phenomenal. and then it's just like it's all just completely wrong, right? Like, SaaS companies end up having like crazy high sales and marketing spend in order to actually like grow the revenues at all, so the margins don't look anywhere near what they look like. Alex Clayton from sort of Meritech had this tweet where now the just publicly reported AI Labs' revenue company, the publicly reported revenues of AI Labs now surpass the entire public SaaS, publicly traded SaaS, industry. Revenues. So it's just like you have this entire like decade of companies, things that people, sort of worked on, revenues, et cetera. And then it turns out like it was all just completely wrong, both on like those companies actually having durability, margins, et cetera. And there's replaced by something that is somehow bigger and potentially also has all those, sort of same like risks and concerns of durability, margin center, and who's the winner? It still ends up being the people that have the fundamental like hardware, sort of infrastructure. Like if you look at like where all their like free cash flow is ending up, it's somehow ending up in like Oracle running data centers, Microsoft running data centers, and NVIDIA basically building the chips that sort of goes into those, and like the energy companies that are providing the energy for it. But like the end like application layer and like software companies end up capturing like none of the sort of margins or cash flows from all of this. And so I don't know. As the guy that's always loved bits and atoms rather than pure bits alone, I continue to feel very validated, and I admit that I enjoy studying, some of these AI companies' gross margin profiles, and then realizing that like the fucking Space Factory company has better gross margins than they.
It's wild. Do you think that there's any hope for inference costs to fall off a cliff and the gross margins to like kind of get right side up very quickly? Because that is the bull case. Like we saw this with DeepSeek. Like the inference cost, even for reasoning models, dropped like 20x very quickly, and you just don't see that in I'm a homemaker, and all of a sudden like the price of lumber just dropped 10x. Like that just doesn't happen. It only happens in software and algorithms where a more elegant implementation of the algorithm can actually drive same results 10x savings in cost, and that feels like everyone's kind of hoping for a bailout maybe, but and I'm like cautiously optimistic that it could happen.
We're gonna get a government bailout of the artificial intelligence industry within the next 365 days. We need a federal backstop.
Yeah, universal tokens. Everyone gets $1,000 in NVIDIA credits or something.
The other like interesting sort of macro lens on this is if you look at the amount of capex that is going into setting up, basically, buying chips, setting up sort of data centers, basically all things that the like, sort of hyperscalers and foundation labs are contributing towards. It's actually the highest single, sort of industry investment line item as a percentage of GDP since basically, the fiber rollout in, sort of the, late 90s. And then before that, the last time that we had an equivalent was basically the railroad boom in the late 1890s, right? I want to say.
And the railroad boom was significantly higher. I think it was like almost 9% of GDP. I know the chart you're thinking of, and I think fiber and like the internet rollout was like 1.2, and we're at like 1.3% of GDP, something like that. So we're not like insane 10% of GDP, which is kind of what like the fast takeoff folks, the Dwarkesh Patel crowd talking with Satya Nadella talking about like this could be 50% of GDP if scaling really, really works like we think it will.
The thing that's unique though to those, relative to those like, prior booms is fiber companies were dependent on their fiber revenue in order to keep justifying rolling out fiber, right? And they obviously ended up being wrong. You thought that fiber was going to be everywhere. There was going to be infinite internet. And then it turns out you set up like a basic backbone for the internet. And then after that, you actually didn't need fiber everywhere. And so there was like projected to be semi-infinite demand for fiber. And now the biggest, sort of company that was rolling that out in like the late 90s, Corning, literally only like finally last year reached their original like peak, 2001, sort of market cap. It took, whatever, like 4 years. Yeah. And most of that now has nothing to do with fiber. It's like the Gorilla Glass that they make for, iPhone, all these other like specialty glass applications, but shows how long it can take to get back to your prior peak. The railroad companies obviously were highly dependent on their rail revenue in order to be able to continue to invest into railroads. What's crazy about the capex that's going into these data centers is like a significant chunk of it is funded from companies that have free cash flow and revenues from completely unrevenue to the AI business, right? Like Meta's funding all of this stuff from like their social media and targeted ads. Microsoft is feeding all of this off of their sort of SaaS revenues. Amazon obviously from their marketplace, et cetera. It's like the only companies that are actually dependent on the AI revenues to fund this capex are like basically the foundation, sort of model companies, and then Google from their monopoly, basically on sort of search. And so when you think about like how long they could potentially sustain that, like 1.3, or you get up to like 2% of GDP, it could potentially take a significantly longer time, if there is any type of sort of bubble here, for there to be eventual sort of decrease on the percent of GDP, because they're not actually that reliant on that capex rollout actually immediately contributing to revenues. And then the crazy part is, like, you still have Apple sort of mostly sitting on a huge chunk of cash and hasn't really participated in all this, other than the fact that actually they're like, revenues have now been flat for like 5.5 years straight. And then their like, balance sheet has basically only decreased linearly, quarter over quarter for the last 5 years straight. So it's like, man, if you were like a more brilliant version of Tim Cook 5 years ago, should have just bought like $90 billion of GPUs and like started building some data centers, and instead he, like, I don't know, rolled out the like iPhone 400 same features as the last one.
iPhone 400 would actually go pretty hard.
To be fair, has good margins and low churn. We gave our intern a new iPhone, and he's still using it. And we can't say that about some of the SaaS that we've had him try.
Happy DAU.
There is a wrinkle with the Apple thing. A lot of the balance sheet decline is because of dividends. They're paying shareholders out. But I agree with you. The other thing that
it still shows they don't know what to do with the cash. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Versus,
I completely agree.
like Zuckerberg.
They're creating the Pixar lamp.
Yeah, they're going to create a Pixar lamp.
Literally
now.
creating the Pixar lamp that will sit on your.
It's going to be an iPad on a robotic arm, and it will be able to like move around and follow you around the room. So if you're FaceTiming with someone in the kitchen and you walk over to the stove or the refrigerator, it'll follow you around.
And they're going to compete with Ring.
I think it'll be very
They don't know what to do with their cash. I think they got plenty of world-changing ideas.
Yeah, they're going to go steamroll a $2 billion company or
it
something.
sounds like a shitty like 2013 like YC like startup sort of pitch, like on the order of like Juicero, basically.
Yeah, who knows? I want to talk about the fractures in the financial world around AI do feel like the foundation's a little more solid because it's coming off of cash flow from these hyperscaler balance sheets. There's also the
and that's the bull case for the hyperscalers in AI and just being competitive, even if they're behind the ball on code gen and personal assistants and things like that. Is that they're just going to be able to sustain this pace and investment level for.
The other kind of source of capital that people are discussing now is private credit, and people are wondering if there's this private credit bubble, but then also private credit isn't mark to market as much. And can you give me kind of like the venture capitalist 101 on how venture capitalists are interfacing with private credit these days? Because it feels like there was usually like a handoff where you invest in a company and then at a certain point it goes public and then, or goes into private equity, and then you're kind of out of the game. But it feels like there's a little bit more interface between the VC world and the private credit world now. Like, do you have any insight into what's going on there? Have you followed that at all?
A bit,
it seems like it's very deal by deal, right?
Study this stuff is like the upstream, which is like the sort of equity side of things.
Sure.
I'm forgetting the sort of exact stat that I'm thinking of, but there was basically this crossover point in the last year, which I want to say it wasn't IPO equity raised, but it was something like sort of capital deployed into like sub $200 billion market cap companies. And basically, for the first time ever, the private capital market was actually as large, and had crossed over to the public, basically capital markets in terms of, sort of fundraising, in terms of like issuing of primary and fundraising. And so the strategies that some of these like major asset managers on the equity side of things, these are obviously like the Fidelities, the BlackRocks, et cetera, the ones that are like, the Vanguard. All of those groups at this point have clearly, sort of admitted to themselves that the sort of prototypical, IPO when you're between $5 and $25 billion market cap is just a world that is not coming back anytime soon. It's not to say there won't be some companies that do that. Obviously, Figma has done, sort of phenomenally well, and so that may tempt some companies to go back to it. But all these asset managers have realized that, so much of the returns are now being, sort of held up in the private markets that they need to, sort of go enter those. And so you're seeing the equivalent on the, sort of private credit side of things. Sure. I don't think I can, sort of share the logo of the company, but there was a company in our portfolio that recently raised hundreds of millions of dollars in private, sort of credit from tier one, basically, sort of bank, top, sort of four in the United States. The the cost of credit that they had on it was effectively like LIBOR plus 25 bips, which is just like the equivalent of
That's
like cost
insane.
of capital for a like $50
Yeah.
billion publicly traded company. It's like,
And
not that
notably
they was
very
similar to-
different than like venture debt, which is like something people like, oh yeah, I raised $10 million. I got a $1 million credit line or something like that. This is a completely
If you,
different
have
world.
if you have a bad quarter, we're gonna
We run the
take over
company.
the asset.
Yeah, exactly. These are totally different. This is like,
Sure.
backing physical assets that these sort of companies
Yeah,
are going
yeah.
and buying and sort of rolling out. And so I remember watching that deal happen and being like, wow. Like, I mean, first as the like equity investor, I'm like, oh my God, this cost of capital, super easy for this company to like, cover the like, CapEx, sort of roll out based off their, sort of margins, et cetera. And so the like return on equity now that you can see as the private investor is like insane, where it's like, why go public where this company doesn't even need to raise that much equity? And they like one of the like there's a lot of value propositions for being public, but one of them is that your like general cost of capital on the debt side just goes down significantly typically when you're sort of a public company. And that was what people thought of on the cost of equity side for a long time. That was the whole purpose of going public, was like, in 2013 you couldn't raise $5 billion in the private markets, and so if you wanted to scale to that level you had to basically go public. Private credit was much more laggard to catch up, but is now actually starting to catch up, where it's like, well, man, your like cost of equity is basically the equivalent, if not cheaper, than what it is when you're public. Now the cost of credit is starting to basically sort of become the equivalent. At some point, it's like, why are you even sort of bothering to sort of you go public? So that was like sort of first set of thoughts that I had. But then the second was, okay, I was like trying to think about it from like the lender perspective. I was like, in what world, are they giving this like, private company the like equivalent cost of capital of like, publicly traded?
Like Apple.
And
It couldn't
in
be
this
that they've just
particular-
raised so much money and they need to deploy it at all costs, right? Couldn't be that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe there's a part of it that's
That
sort
couldn't
of
be it. That couldn't be
sort
it,
of-
right? Like, why would we?
But
We raised a lot of money. We have a lot of AUM. We got to take some huge risk right here. We got to deploy. We can't generate fees unless we're slugging around
Maybe.
huge checks.
But what's the other reason?
I think the other reason is like there's these certain like super cycle macro trends that sort of feel unstoppable, and if your company is related to that, the banks are willing to underwrite it because they believe that, like, look, this piece of infrastructure that you're building, if you don't utilize it, there will be a fast follower that quickly, sort of jams it up. So you build out XYZ data center with all these GPUs.
Yep.
For some reason, if your model, your like particular consumer application doesn't work, somebody else is basically going to go snap that up.
Yep.
And so they clearly are treating like a part of underwriting, CapEx as a, infrastructure like debt provider is thinking about like, if the like equity holder of this, basically goes belly up, is
Yep.
this, does this asset actually have secondary liquidity, right? And so that's why, companies that have super esoteric pieces of equipment or technology, a little harder to have debt. If you're buying something, say like, at Varda,
I mean,
we
even
have,
like that
CNC
warehouse.
machines.
I mean, the warehouse space. Like, if you were to, I don't know, you're probably leasing it, but like, if you were to say, I want a mortgage and I want to buy a warehouse, like that's hyper liquid, and you can sell that to somebody else who needs a warehouse very easily. You're in El Segundo. It's pretty simple. But yeah, like if it's R&D, and if the R&D doesn't produce fruits, like that needs to be equity backed. That needs to be paid for with equity. And so, it is interesting that, there's this like super cycle, and there's certain technologies, certain pieces of equipment, certain pieces of hardware that you can just underwrite way, way differently because somebody's going to pick them up. There's three
Water cooling towers
hyperscalers.
at GPU centers,
Yeah,
transmission
yeah.
lines, like people building transformers.
Yeah.
The gas turbines that people are using for like, basically
Totally.
backup, sort of power to like smooth out the grid, battery systems. And so it's interesting where it's like, you almost have the like, and I always talk about this, like you want to, transform the world. You can, do all the government policy you want, but ultimately it's like the invisible hand that is going to, make
Yep.
this happen.
Yep.
When we think about like electrification and build out of like, sort of grid, when we think about like reshoring of, sort of manufacturing in the United States and having like, not just 10 CNC machines in a facility like this, but like hundreds, thousands, et cetera.
Yeah.
The easiest signal to see whether or not that stuff is going to happen is like, what is the cost of capital to go do that? And the banks are clearly signaling like, we believe that this is such a macro trend. There's such strong, sort of support from the market, such strong support from government policy that like we're going to be giving these like subscale companies, but that are focused in these particular areas, cost of capital low enough that this, and we believe that the risk is low enough because of the secondary liquidity and because of all these macro trends, that it sort of becomes this self-fulfilling loop where now all of a sudden you do get, all of those, sort of trends, built out on, crazy amounts of energy built out, reshoring of production in the United States, sort of huge data centers. And so now this stuff can also go in the reverse direction, but I think it's just like one of these highlights of like, capital markets are just so reflexive. Where like when people believe in a trend more, then the cost of capital becomes less, then the rollout, basically happens faster, and then it loops on itself where the cost of capital becomes less, et cetera. And so you're seeing this in these like, sort of categories. but there's like more sustainability again to this, especially in the data center world, where it's not dependent on the data centers producing cash flows for a lot of these businesses. Obviously, on all things reshoring production, they're obviously more sort of dependent on actual revenues there. The only other topic that I was going to sort of flag, by the way, is I don't know if you guys saw, but the White House actually put out an executive order yesterday that was one of their sort of first broader orders on basically maintaining commercial space leadership in the United States that I kind of wanted to
please break it down.
Since, a little bit of Delta V space topic.
Break it down, spaceman.
Spaceman.
Breaking it down, it was something. I hope I don't butcher. Apologies, Michael Kratsios, if I butchered the name of the order, but it was something like America maintaining, making space great again. Maintaining American leadership
I'm sure.
in space. There were a couple different aspects of it, that I enjoyed, reading through. I think the first primary lens that I put on it is it was just the clearest language that I've ever seen from a government official talking about just making so much of space activity far more regular. It was everything from just rethinking the regulations around both launch and reentry to think of these things as like much more sort of regular activities. The example that I always like to provide in relation to sort of Varda was if you've studied the airspace around Cape Canaveral over the past sort of decade, it's had a sort of significant shift in that there used to just be the occasional rocket launch that would do a basically like temporary shutdown of airspace. Flights would get sort of rerouted across Florida in order to sort of accommodate that, and it was always sort of like a one-off special operation. At this point, if you actually look at like the commercial plane traffic patterns around Florida, most of it has basically largely shifted. Like they used to typically actually like fly along the coast. If you think about that in New York to Miami flight, it would actually sort of cut along the sort of coast to basically sort of reduce a little bit the distance. Now, because there's just such consistent operations, the airspace is basically predicted to be effectively closed off at basically all times.
Sure.
And so all of the commercial airline traffic basically just goes along the like central line of Florida. And it sounds like a sort of simple thing, but it's interesting to think about like how day-to-day activities and commercial activities are shaped when something is seen as like a regular activity rather than like a sort of special occasion. And so you've seen that built out around Cape Canaveral, where now do have this like rocket flight corridor that is basically just like permanently sort of cordoned off. It's really the only place that we have that in the United States at that regular event activity where like it's thought of as something that needs to be cordoned off. You obviously have Vandenberg, sort of Space Force Base, but still their things are still occasional enough that you don't have the equivalent. There's also a little bit less like, sort of commercial, flight traffic that, sort of goes around there. It's just a little bit, less in like a, sort of dense urban population. But a part of the sort of executive order from the president was both sort of rethinking and reshaping basically launch and reentry regulation, but also clearly pushing for an establishing of a bunch of spaceports around America that are meant to have basically sort of regular both reentry and and launch activity, and then thinking through how much burden should there be put on reentry vehicles that are coming back from space if those reentry vehicles have basically what's known as a flight termination system on board. Basically, it's like, hey, if something's going wrong, just explode the damn thing so we don't accidentally like land in the wrong place. And so should you allow for basically like looser regulations when you know that there is that type of sort of termination system on board that can basically self-terminate if you're in an off nominal scenario. And so it was just great to see leadership from the administration and the president in such a like pointed direction of, hey, this type of activity needs to be thought of as like day to day and as common as like commercial, sort of flight. The example that I like to give is, we are now approaching the point of the amount of orbital rocket launches from the United States per year is about the same number of commercial airliners landing and taking off in LAX every day.
Wow.
So that stuff is becoming, regular. It's still 365, off of, truly, the daily equivalent of LAX, but it's like, it's in the orders of magnitude now of like, some of our busiest airports. And so we need to think of these things not as like rocket launch pads, but like spaceports. And I like that the executive order had like the word spaceport in it like 15 times, not like esoteric, crazy rocket launch pad thing. It's like, airports and spaceports.
We kind of do that with the commercial flights. I think like when commercial airliners are flying east to west, they fly at like 35,000 feet. And when you're flying west to east, you fly at 32,000 feet. So there's just always a gap. And, you don't even have to think about like, am I going to run into someone? Because you're just, everyone's just codified.
The default pattern of operation makes it so you don't have to think about that. And so we need the equivalent for spaceports where it's like, there's this corridor that allows, for reentry, regularly, and just like it's not like it's a one-off rerouting of planes, but the planes just don't go there because they know that that's where things reenter.
Anything
what's
on
the what's the update on Firefly Aerospace? They went out. They went public on August 7th at 60, down 18-ish% since then. But this is the company that had the rover
Moon
on
landing.
the moon landing.
Yeah.
But what's the general update on the company? And I would.
Like how do they fit in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I've been spending a bunch of time with some of the investment bankers that sort of led that deal, and then some of the like long hedge funds that did it. It was exciting to see that of the call it like top 8 mega IPO allocators that are like the long only sort of public equity types. I think something like 7 out of the 8 did like meaningful sort of positions in that Firefly IPO round. And so I think this kind of goes back to like the sort of super cycle stuff that we were talking about, where I do think that this stuff starts to become a little bit of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where like you have the president of the administration really leaning in and leaning forward. Obviously, there's like Jared Isaacman, no longer administrator, Secretary Duffy stepping in. They're trying to find interim. So there's obviously things that they're still sorting out on like our space leadership, but clearly sort of leaning forward in a way that is sort of marching towards wanting more launch providers, more activity both military and civil in space, and then obviously towards the moon and Mars. Firefly, has had a somewhat sort of complicated history. It's no longer the original founding CEO. They've had a swap out CEO a few times. But I do think in this sort of category of aerospace company, it's really important to focus on just like ultimate like flights and success in those. And for what it's worth, Firefly has accomplished 2 things that I think are quite phenomenal. They are the only rocket launch company that basically had this contract with the DoD, where the DoD basically had them on guard. And then they were only given 24 hours notice and they had to launch a satellite. And so it wasn't like pre-planned, et cetera. It was like basically like responsive, sort of launch is I think the sort of term that the Air Force gave it. I think it was Air Force. And so very impressive to have done that. And then obviously, they've managed to actually, sort of land on the moon and not tip over. Intuitive Machines is still working on that, sort of second part. So they've clearly accomplished some things. Financial profile of the business, I admit, is like, it's a lot of CapEx, a lot of burn. It's not super repeatable, sort of yet. But the fact that like, these public, long, equity folks are, buying in at such scale, again, improves their balance sheet, reduces their cost of capital, clearly shows some signaling from the equity markets, at least, that they really do believe that this type of like lunar infrastructure, launch infrastructure is something that has such macro tailwinds behind it that, even though they're still, choppy in terms of operations, et cetera, that there's, sort of clear potential there. And you're seeing that with Rocket Lab. I mean, look at the company. Like, was, I think a year ago, probably trading at like 3.5, sort of $4 billion in market cap. It's something like a $22 billion, sort of market cap company today, as like, amongst the, sort of higher, sort of, rev multiple, sort of ratios, in all things, A&D.
Let's give it up for high revenue multiples.
We love them here. We love them here.
Love them. Give them to the rocket companies, baby. So
We don't have enough of them.
Yeah, not saying Varda's going public anytime soon, but it is encouraging to see all the interest and activity.
Well, you're the one who said you were talking with investment bankers.
Yeah.
Oh, the job of a capital allocator.
Right. So I posted earlier, somewhat of a joke, somewhat real. Breaking group chat: sentiment flips bearish. Investor confidence dips to the lowest level since late 2023. Source: my phone. How are you feeling about general sentiment right now in private markets? There's been a lot of exuberance. A lot of people.
Should we be fearful?
Yeah, a lot of people being greedy. Should we be? Is there any alpha in being fearful?
Yeah, we always try to zig when others are zagging at FF, obviously. So when we see this level of exuberance, I think that always makes us a little more hesitant. But yeah, it's been wild to see just the sort of depth of interest, but in this like sort of K-shaped sort of dynamic, right? Where the equivalent of like I forget who tweeted this today, some relatively prominent venture capitalist, or maybe reporter that was basically saying that like private capital markets are basically replicating the like Mag 7 strategy, but in the private markets, where it's like basically if you look at the like Mag 7 versus the like S&P 493, S&P 493 is basically flat, Mag 7 are up. You kind of have the equivalent dynamic in private capital markets, both literally with like the individual logos of like SpaceX, OpenAI, Anduril, et cetera, where it's like representing the biggest chunk of capital allocated ever in the history of private capital markets. But I think is also generally true in like the categories where it's like if you're not A&D and if you're not AI, oh my God, like there's like basically no interest and nobody wants to to talk to you. And then if you're in those categories, the rounds get done in like a sort of week and are done at like the sort of craziest prices. Yeah, I think we always stick to our general strategy of like, ignore the noise, focus on the things that we think are in the long term. And so,
it's worth remembering, because we just had, we Figma IPO was, this amazing moment. But if you look back, it's like Andrew Reid did the C at 400 million post, and you look at you look at the companies that are doing rounds of 400 posts right now, and they were not anywhere near that kind of profile.
In those categories, this is where, again, obviously there's lots of benefits to doing the hot category where you're like downstream, financings typically are much less risky, but there's also the, return, compression there. So my, sort of pithy joke on it is like, while everybody else is focused on, A&D and like AI, I'm just doing the Series A's of like fish killing robot companies where, nobody's really thinking. So.
We tasted Shinkai on the stream. It was a lot of fun. What does A&D stand for?
Oh, aerospace and defense.
Aerospace and defense.
Sorry, I'm spending too much time with capital allocators.
Lots of jargon. Lots of jargon.
Public jargon. Too much jargon.
What else needs to be clarified in space? Obviously, the spaceport, the actual path the rockets travel along is important. But is there appetite for more clear regulation around LEO, Middle Earth orbit, geo orbit? Are there even just like re-entry of the pods that Varda sends up? Like what else? What's the next thing that we need to kind of standardize around?
I like that in my head now. I have Middle Earth orbit going. So
yeah, Middle Earth orbit. What's it actually called?
Anduril, Medium Earth orbit.
Medium Earth orbit. I like Middle Earth.
I like
orbit.
Middle Earth orbit better.
Let's take it back. Let's coin it.
Exactly. I mean, there has been, I've heard some like, sort of light rumblings, sort of around this. Mm-hmm. Right now, when you look at sort of general space policy, it is kind of split up in a bunch of different areas. You basically have FAA responsible for all launch and reentry licensing, so basically like when you're in the air. Then once you're in orbit, you have everything from if you want to take photos of other things in orbit, that's all regulated by NOAA. Kind of crazy because it's like, NOAA stands for like Ocean, whatever administration, et cetera. So it's like, why are they regulating pictures? But it's because they're responsible for all things OSINT, in photography land. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to communicate with your satellite, it's the radio spectrum from the FCC, and they even govern, like, so for example, one of the sort of recent back and forths, more in the prior administration around Varda was they were trying to debate whether or not ISAM, so in-space assembly and manufacturing, needed to live in its own specific, sort of spectrum, and everybody had to communicate in there rather than getting to be in like the general, sort of space, sort of spectrum. And so you have all these like sort of split, sort of regulators. And as a space company, it's very burdensome relative to like, okay, if you're like a pharmaceutical company, you kind of know that like your only regulator is the, sort of FDA, and that's all that you're, sort of working with. And so, I think, probably when I think about what needs to, sort of happen next beyond just the spaceports, it's just like make it so that there's sort of more of a single point of contact if you're a space company, rather than having to establish like 4 different, sort of regulatory, relationships, which by the way, none of them talk to one another, right?
Yeah.
So that, and then probably like a space traffic coordinator, like there isn't the equivalent of like, we have air traffic control here. There's regulations on like how you need to report your position, how you communicate, et cetera. Space traffic control, they like kind of started something actually in the first Trump administration. It worked through Biden administration, and then oddly enough, the Trump administration actually shut down their own project. And so now we're kind of back to like wild west again on all things space traffic. So it's mostly just like literal, like the companies like individually email each other, and there's like this one like nonprofit foundation that like collects everybody's space traffic data. And then it's like, and by the way, there's no rules. And like, by the way, if like you're going to be intersecting with a Chinese satellite, and then like the nonprofit introduces you and the Chinese company over email, it's not obvious like who's going to maneuver. Like, there's no rule.
It's a game of chicken.
It's still just chaos. Mostly helps that it's mostly just pretty empty up there, so there's not that many incursions.
We're gonna need regulation around drunk space.
We're gonna need pilots who live their life 1 mile at a time. I have
a sort of an odd.
Pretty short if you're going 14,000 miles an hour. That's, maybe 14,000 miles at a time.
Yeah, what's your read on the future of the sort of pilot career path? It seems like obviously we like many different types of planes have like great autonomous systems, yet we obviously still want pilots in the cabin. How do you when you kind of look at the progress happening on the autonomous side, where do you think human pilots will fit in?
Man, there's clearly some things that are moving forward. Like, Secretary Duffy, Secretary of Transportation, has really pushed forward more aggressively than I would have expected on all things like eVTOL, beyond visual line of sight, sort of drones, on the like the small scale, sort of vehicle autonomy side of things. When you think about like a Boeing 747, sort of getting actually fully automated, man, the commercial airline or, sort of commercial passenger stuff is just, it feels so hard. And a part of it is other than obviously a recent whole set of events, DCA crash obviously included. Generally, the United States has such a flawless safety profile. I think we talked about this in other
Yeah.
to get things changed because you have so much such a sort of great safety record. So I think jobs.
Yeah,
of pilots,
when you think about if you have hundreds of people in a single metal tube flying through the air, is it worth
Might as
having
well pay for
a
one
couple
more
more
to,
people to
be
be in there?
It's
at
also
least,
there's also an economic dynamic where I believe the cost of labor for an Uber is about 70% borne by human labor, whereas the cost of a 747 flight is like 7% pilot fees,
Fuel.
even though the pilot no, it's like 50% fuel, 70% fuel.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
inverted.
Whereas the gas in the Uber is like 10% of the cost of the ride, 70% is the actual human, and so there's a very different economic dynamic there. But we're actually going to talk to Merlin Labs today that are and Merlin is going public. They work on autonomous flights for planes, autonomous pilots for planes. So we'll dig in with Matthew George.
Yeah.
later
My
in the
last
show.
comment for this session is this is my sort of favorite one where I didn't realize I was going to be on TBPN until the TBPN account tweeted and it was like Dell's on today, and I was like, I didn't know that. Look at my well, lo and behold, look at it, I am. So
That's
anyway.
amazing. We should just communicate purely over x.com. It is the everything app after all. Anyway, this is
Cool.
always a great time. Thanks so much for hopping on.
Later, boys.
We'll
Bye.
talk
Great
to you
to
later.
see you.
Bye. And whether we talk to Delian about the markets, whether you're long, whether you're short, whether you think it's a top or a local bottom, head over to public.com. Investing for those who take it seriously. They got multi-asset investing, industry-leading yields, and they're trusted by millions, folks. We are joined next by some folks at Anduril. Today, Anduril posted. They are waiting in the Restream waiting room, I believe. We will bring them in just a second. Anduril Industries said, introducing the Anduril 250, the first ever NASCAR race on an active military base. So welcome to the
So
stream.
cool.
I believe we have Jeff and Jen joining. So welcome to the stream from the Restream waiting room. Whoa. Okay. Hey, we got. Can we
We're
flip
somehow
them? Can they flip their
seeing you
camera? We're
vertical.
seeing you horizontal or
Yeah.
flipped somehow. But good to meet you. Good to see you. Actually, I met both of you online. And Jen's been on the show before. Let's try and rotate the camera 90 degrees if possible. There we
There
go.
we go.
Looking good. And I
That
see some
thing
vehicle in
looks
the
Ready.
stunning. Both of them.
fantastic. How are you doing today?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Miller. I'm great. It's good to see you, John. Good to see you, Jordy. We're here in the hangar in Mooresville, North Carolina. So we wanted to give you guys a little bit of a window into our big announcement around the Anduril 250.
Why North Carolina? Isn't this happening in San Diego?
Well, NASCAR headquarters is
Makes
in
sense.
Daytona and in Charlotte. So we've been here this week, not only working with the NASCAR team to make sure we show up into the sport in an authentic way, but we've also been meeting with several of the teams themselves because you might be seeing an Anduril stock car with a paint scheme come June 21st, 2026.
Fantastic.
So getting to learn the sport as we make the announcement.
Yeah, what is the Anduril colorway? I think when I think of Anduril, I think of like
Slate
all the
gray.
the slate gray, but then I also think of all the anime colors. And so there's a little bit of both. Is yellow and gray going to be a brand pattern going forward?
Well, black is their primary color, not a color.
We are not getting a lot of audio from you. I don't know if is there one microphone? What's going on here? Can we hear you, Jen?
Yeah,
We can hear Jeff.
What
We
Jeff
can't.
was saying is that, okay, great. So Jeff was saying that black is in not only one of our core colors, or not a color, as you like to say, but our accent tone there is safety yellow. So
there we go.
anything that you see, whether it's in incredible products that Jen and team are designing, the finish, you're going to see that safety yellow. So in the paint scheme here, we like to call it, using the language that they use here in NASCAR versus what you'll hear more in F1 called a livery, what we call livery on our aircraft. For our paint scheme here, we really leaned into that black and that safety yellow.
The car looks incredible.
Looks
you
amazing.
guys cooked as usual. Can you give us a tour of the livery? I want to see it close up.
Can the camera move around? Can you show us the car
Can
up
you hear
close?
me at all?
A little bit. I can hear you like
yeah.
loosely on
Can you hear
his
me?
microphone, I think. But if
Oh,
it's like
great.
if it's a shared pair of
Well, you're
AirPods, it's
gonna have to
probably
come
switching
with me.
back and forth. Let's see if we can get a tour of the car.
Okay, I'm
Oh, there we go. Now
gonna
we can hear
take
you,
you
Jen.
around the car.
Okay. Very cool. This is wild.
All right.
Insane.
So
That's a huge
like we
Anduril
said,
logo on the front. You
primary
really
color-
dominated this. Yeah. Safety
The
yellow.
primary color is black, right?
Okay.
The safety yellow comes from our livery scheme on our actual products, where we're calling out high vis,
Yeah, very
critical
cool.
warnings and markings.
Sure.
And as we think about bringing these two worlds together, I really thought there was a lot of symmetry, a lot of kinship between our two identities, right? I think I love also spending time here, getting to know the NASCAR brand, like bringing, they're leaning really hard into their legacy and their heritage, but then they pair that with such contemporary, bold graphics and high, visibility colors, which is, there's a lot of synergy between our identity and their identity.
We got to
Car
get some
looks
Mustang
beautiful.
GTDs in the Anduril parking lot after the next tender. Have you seen the Mustang GTD?
It's
It's
beautiful.
like a $500,000 Mustang. It's beautiful. Oh, wow. Is that a Fury in the background too?
Yeah.
That's right.
It's hard to
That's,
see.
That's amazing.
Jeff can walk you around the Fury.
That's awesome. Talk to me about the actual race. Would this race have existed without Anduril stepping in? It's not just the logo on a car. It's not just the logo on the entire car. It's the logo and the name Anduril on the actual race.
And a whole
correct?
new race.
And a whole new race.
Yeah, what I'd like to say is that this race, first and foremost, is the brainchild of NASCAR leadership and the U.S. Navy. So it's our privilege to be a part of it. Ben Kennedy, we were going to have the opportunity to speak with. He's got such incredible vision, along with Amy, the race director. And so we came on in April. Jen and I had a chance to go on the Navy base. And the second you step foot on Naval Base Coronado, this is where the films Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick had scenes filmed. That famous sidebar is there. You stepped on a U.S. aircraft carrier, and you feel the power. You feel like you're there, and with people who are doing work that really matters. So yes, this race would have absolutely worked without us, but I think what NASCAR saw in Anduril was a company that was so deeply committed to our American values and our warfighter, and wanted to celebrate that story, that it was a perfect fit.
Very cool. Well, we're going to hop on with Ben Kennedy from NASCAR. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. When is the actual race? Can people buy tickets now? Is it on sale? What's the next step?
And how do we get some merch? People are usually asking us that.
People are
but
definitely
now
gonna
we're
want-
asking you
definitely
that.
gonna want some merch.
We can talk offline, but yeah, when is the
race?
The race is June 21st, 2026. You can go ahead and get your place your deposits now.
Let's
We'll
go.
definitely be having merch. I'm expecting a live broadcast from TBPN.
We will be there.
on the
We will be
Navy
there.
base.
100%. I can't wait.
So yeah, can't wait to run this back with you guys in about 11 months.
Fantastic.
Incredible.
Thank you so much, and
wait, guys.
congratulations on the partnership. We're very excited
Beautifully
to
executed.
keep tracking it, and can't wait for the race. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
Thanks for coming on.
And we're also notorious for running snarky billboard ads on 101. If you want to run an ad, go to adquick.com. Out-of-home advertising made easy and measurable. Say goodbye to the headaches of out-of-home advertising. Only AdQuick combines technology, out-of-home expertise, and data to enable efficient, seamless ad buying across the globe. Did you see the billboard that they actually dropped on the 101? Yeah, we talked about this, where Jeff Miller, who we just talked to, put up a billboard of the Fury saying, no more enterprise SaaS. Because every single, I think Trey Stevens got sick of seeing another enterprise SaaS billboard, and he said, "I need an Anduril billboard up there," and so they did it.
They did it.
And so we will be hopping on with Ben Kennedy from NASCAR in just a few minutes. But in the meantime, let's tell you about Bezel. GetBezel.com. Your Bezel concierge is available now to source you any watch on the planet. Seriously, any watch. Jordy, where would you like to go in the post? We got about
I have a post
5
here
minutes.
from Ian Roundtree, friend of the show. He says, a friend hadn't heard of TBPN and another described it as follows. TBPN is a very popular ramp infomercial in the style of ESPN. Instead of rankings tied to sport leagues, they are tied to how early and how much you invested in ramp or how close you are to someone who did. I said, fact check, true.
We love it. We love it.
Daniel Tenrero says, happy CoreWeave lockup expiry day, basically the Super Bowl for guys like us, CoreWeave, down 10%
As
today.
some folks sell. I'm not sure how the actual
actually now
lockup plays
down
out.
15%.
15%.
Still a $48 billion company, and
Not a bad run.
Shout out Nick Carter.
They also
angel investor in the.
Oh yeah, that's right.
What was it? Seed round.
Out. Yeah. Yeah,
you
so
can run the numbers on
CoreWeave most
position,
recently beat on top line, missed on bottom line. They are burning something around $300 million a quarter, but making a lot of revenue. And so,
who hasn't burned?
They're investing.
300 billion,
investing.
300 million a quarter.
Yeah.
It happens. Parag Agrawal says he's just setting up his Twitter again.
Coming on the show today.
Heads down, building parallel with some of the best people he's ever worked with. Creating infrastructure for AIs to search and use the web. He will be on the show in not too long. Very excited for that. Buck says STAAS, S-T-A-A-S, subsidized tokens as a service, i.e. most of the VC-backed AI app layer. And on that note, a Chris Pike post has hit the timeline.
Oh, yeah?
A Google Doc has hit the timeline. I repeat, a Google Doc has hit the timeline. It's called Cursor's Problem.
Mm-hmm.
Product market fit is the story founders love to tell. Business model product market fit is the part they often skip. Product market fit is users repeatedly choose your product. Business model product fit, the extraction of value is sustainably in excess and proportional to the cost of delivering value. Cursor has relied on a subscription model that historically allowed for quote-unquote unlimited use. That's a fixed revenue variable cost setup. Insurance companies are the canonical example, and they employ actuaries to accurately price risk and segment users. Hypergrowth startups rarely have that muscle. When variable costs scale with intensity of usage, but revenue doesn't, you're not selling software, you're underwriting risk. Without actuarial discipline, pricing, segmentation, caps, exclusions, these models drift into the same ditch that killed MoviePass, Oyster, and forced ClassPass to retire quote-unquote unlimited. Cohorts invert, your most profitable users churn because they use the product the least and get the least value. Oftentimes they can get better value from a competitor who prices them more accurately or with less breakage. The remaining users are those who extract more value than they pay. Over time, older cohorts morph into deeply negative gross margin. Top line mass rot, new larger cohorts can briefly offset the drag, hiding the deterioration in earlier cohorts. Revenue grows, margin quality quietly decays. A large cause of this problem in fast-growing companies is the conflation of subsidies and marketing. They are both expensive growth strategies, but they do very different things. Mm-hmm. Marketing buys attention. It changes who hears about you, not what the product is worth in equilibrium. Subsidies buy behavior. They put economic value on the product scale, distorting the read on willingness to pay. Mm-hmm. The 15-minute delivery boom made this vivid. PMF seemed strong when prices were artificially low. When prices rose to true cost, demand snapped back. The quote-unquote fit was with the discount, not the service. Venture lore points to Uber and DoorDash as counterexamples. The lesson isn't negative gross margins are fine. The lesson is if there's an operational path to positive margins, i.e. density, batching, or utilization, and future pricing power, quote, moats, the temporary subsidies can be a bridge. Indeed, venture capital is precisely the right instrument to facilitate these kinds of companies, but most businesses don't have such a bridge. Does this bridge exist for Cursor? Cursor's users expect the best coding performance, which is currently delivered by the frontier models. That pins Cursor's cogs to OpenAI Anthropic price cards. Cursor doesn't control two critical dials. One, model performance frontier, which is what users demand, and model input-output pricing, what Cursor pays. If Cursor steps down to cheaper, weaker models, the users who care about performance will notice and churn. Those who can tolerate weaker models can get them cheaper elsewhere. If it stays at the frontier while keeping prices flat, the variable real cost to service their heaviest users will explode. In an effort to combat this, Cursor has been forced to raise prices and institute usage caps, leading to user outrage and churn. Anytime unlimited shows up in variable cost businesses, PMF becomes a permanently open question. Are users here for the product or for the subsidy? Would they still use it as much or at all at true marginal cost? Until Cursor prices consumption in proportion to cost, it cannot know. Last couple
so
paragraphs.
Interesting that we're going into, we're leaving the world of zero marginal costs. Like this is the Ben Thompson intellectual, like aggregation theory regime of the past 2 decades. Like since if you're trying to understand Google, you had to understand what it meant to serve an incremental user at zero marginal cost. And it was something that Wall Street and retail and lots of folks, even a lot of VCs, like could not wrap their minds around for a long, long time. And there was huge alpha in that. And now it's become consensus right when the economic equation is now flipping. I just wonder how long we'll be in this regime, if it's here to stay, if we plateau, and reasoning models are always expensive. And then I do wonder how bad the gross margins are at various companies, how bad this subsidized tokens problem is. And I also wonder if there are any companies, like there have been plenty previously previous era SaaS companies that have gone out and said, hey, we're an AI company now. And I wonder if that's hurt their gross margins. I've been picking at that with a few founders that have come on. I've said is your inference bill growing, or is it material at all? And basically what I'm getting at is is it affecting your gross margins?
Yeah, we were asking Rahul from Julius about this, and he said that it's a thing, but it's not incredibly material.
There's going to you just have to find a way with the application layer company that you build to deliver enough value that the actual inference is under the hood very efficient. And then I do wonder if Cursor's in a unique position because it's such a raw interface to the frontier coding model, and the quality really matters. But yeah, could they swap out DeepSeek R2, save 10 times as much money, and then all of a sudden
to finish
great
off
gross
Chris's
margins.
post, he says Cursor will have to choose what it wants to know. If it keeps subsidizing the heaviest usage, it can keep growing, but it cannot claim unambiguous PMF. If it starts charging in proportion to cost, some usage will fall, and what remains will be the market. The burning question that should nag founders: do I have demand for my product or for my subsidies? So
it seems
Cursor's without a doubt
very
a beloved product.
Yeah, and it seems very reasonable to subsidize for a while and really get people installed and hooked on the product, and then raise prices to the point where you are delivering value. Like when you think about what the value of an AI software engineer, that could be justified in the $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year territory. That doesn't seem that crazy to me if you're actually getting that leverage out of the system. But the idea of saying, oh yeah, my IDE bill is $10K a month is crazy. But it could be. I don't know. Anyway,
before we get into our next guest, Ben,
Yep.
We have some news breaking. Cohere just raised $500 million
Ooh,
at
let's go for Aiden
billion.
Gomez.
And
On the Transformer paper, one of the greatest to ever do it.
Nick on X says, we are so back.
We are so back. Congratulations to the
I'm
folks
feeling
over
it.
Cohere.
Well, let's bring in Ben from the Restream waiting room.
Ben Kennedy from NASCAR. How you doing? Ben, good to meet
What's
you.
happening?
Good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me on today.
Of course. Why don't you kick me off with an introduction on yourself and how you fit in the NASCAR organization?
Yeah, so my name's Ben Kennedy. I am EVP here at NASCAR, but we get the opportunity to wear a bunch of different hats. So we're responsible for the NASCAR-owned track properties, NASCAR regional team, emissions team, people making improvements to our racetracks. And then importantly, what we're talking about today is schedule. So dreaming up the next year's schedule, and we're getting ready to announce our 2026 schedule here pretty soon. But one of our big projects, which I know we're talking about today, is the race on the base next year.
Yep.
We're bringing our NASCAR Cup Series, our Xfinity Series, and our Craftsman Truck Series to San Diego for the first time, and for the first time ever on a military base. So really excited about it.
Take me through the shape of all of the different NASCAR events, because there's there's the tentpole events that people kind of know and love, and then there's a whole bunch of other different properties, activations, events, races. Kind of give me the shape of what NASCAR is today.
Yeah, so we compete across 38 race weekends throughout the year. 36 of those are points races, and then we have 2 exhibition races. And our season, it starts in February with the biggest race of the year, the Daytona 500. So we're a little bit different in the sense that we start with our Super Bowl, and then we will go pretty much straight through the entire year. We'll have 1 or 2 weeks off to the first week in November, where we'll have our championship race, which will be in Phoenix this year. So we're competing every single season. We have 3 different national series. So you can almost think of it like high school or college that kind of leads to the pros. But we have our Cup Series, our Xfinity Series, which is our last step for a lot of drivers before they go up to the Premier Series. And then our Craftsman Truck Series, which are a little bit different style of vehicle. It's more of a pickup truck style. And that's where a lot of drivers will start their National Series career as they begin touring with us. So,
and then how does the race on the base fit into that structure?
Yeah, so the race on the base will be it'll be in the middle of our season. So Amazon Prime will cover it for the Cup Series. And we'll have the Xfinity Series and Truck Series, which will be on Saturday and Friday of that weekend. But it's June 19th to 21st. And essentially what we're going to do at Naval Base Coronado is we're going to build a temporary 3-mile circuit that will go around the base. So anyone that comes out, we're going to create kind of these different neighborhoods of experiences that fans can go and see. So you'll have the start finish line where you'll have, a lot of the hospitality, the garage area, people will be able to get down and see and hear the cars. They'll go out towards the bay side of San Diego, or they'll go past an aircraft carrier or two. And then eventually we'll come out onto the tarmac where they'll be weaving their way through F-18s and Ospreys and all sorts of fun stuff. So don't have the course design finalized yet, but around a 3-mile course, we're going to build temporary on the base.
Yeah,
what do you think the expected lap time will be for a course of that size?
It's a good question. I would say, we've run a couple models on it. We do a lot of our sim work virtual before we commit to anything. It's around 1.5 minutes, 1:40 seconds or so. It's a pretty high speed track.
120 miles an hour on average, something like that, I imagine. That's wild. That'll be a lot of fun to watch. Talk about partnering with Anduril, who they are trying to reach. They have customers, they have employees, they have fans of the merch. Why was it a good partnership? What are you excited to deliver to them on the marketing side, and what do they bring to the table other than just money?
Yeah, we couldn't ask for a better partner than Anduril, and we, if we approach them or they approach us, I think we reached out to them, through the grapevine, and we had some conversations earlier this year, probably 5 or 6 months ago with them, and they had a ton of energy around the event. And for us, we want to find partners and companies that we can do business with that are both strategic in the sense that we're going to add value to them, and hopefully they'll add value to the weekend, which I know they're going to do. But partners that are organic as well. And you couldn't think of a more natural fit than a partner like Anduril. You look at all the different types of technology that they're creating, both on the software side and the hardware side. It's incredible. And you think about precision, speed, and innovations in technology. That's what our sport is all about. So couldn't ask for a better partner than Anduril. Really fired up about the announcement today. This has been a long one coming. We had a couple of Easter eggs that snuck out about a month ago when we had the announcement, but glad to be able to be talking publicly today about it, and excited to see there's a lot of elements that they're going to be bringing to the table over the next 11 months, and then especially on that weekend that fans will get to go out and experience as a part of it.
What's the path? A lot of our audience are founders and executives at various technology companies. What's the path into partnering with NASCAR itself or various teams and events?
Yeah, I would say if anyone's interested, reach out to us. I'm sure we can find a way to provide contact info and whatnot, but typically we'll have conversations with whoever might be interested. I think the good news is there's a lot of interest around this event, and whether it's NASCAR as a sanctioning body or a team or a driver, we have connections to everyone in the industry. So happy to put them in touch along the way.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for hopping on the stream. Congrats on the partnership.
On the announcement. We'll see you there.
I'm looking forward to it. We'll see you there.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys out there. It'll be a blast.
This is going to be
awesome.
great. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, Ben.
Bye. If you're looking to go to San Diego, you got to book a wander. Find your happy place. Find your happy place. Book a wander with inspiring views, hotel-grade amenities, dreamy beds, top-tier cleaning, 24/7 concierge service. It's a vacation home, but better, folks. Jordy, warm up that gong we have.
I just want to say,
we have Jessica waiting in the Restream waiting room.
Live streaming from an aircraft carrier for the race.
We can do it for sure. For sure.
Well, let's bring
in Jessica from the
Sola,
from the Restream waiting room, and from Sola.
Hey,
how you doing?
Hey, what's
Good
happening?
to meet you.
Good.
Welcome to the show.
It's good. Would you mind kicking us off with an introduction on yourself and the company?
Absolutely. I'm Jess. I'm co-founder and CEO of Sola. We're an agentic process automation platform that helps businesses automate their most operational workflows using AI by doing workflows the way that humans do.
Name one process you've automated with an agentic workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. As an example, we work with companies across a whole bunch of different verticals, but for example, for some of the logistics companies we work with, you can imagine they operate on internal portals, external systems, spreadsheets, everything in between. And to actually get a shipment out end to end, it requires a lot of manual work. And so Sola will type data in, it will take down data, it will, do all the coordination that gets the shipment end to end and work in that fashion.
Give us the news today. Anything to share?
Very exciting day. We just raised a 17 million Series A led by A16Z.
Congratulations.
Don't leave out conviction.
I was just about to get there. With continued support from our seed lead Conviction as well as Y Combinator.
There we go.
Oh, fantastic.
Amazing.
That's great.
Great lineup.
Talk to me about what the state of the art is in actually building an agentic workflow on top of kind of an internal dashboard. We've been hearing a lot about like the big labs setting up reinforcement learning environments with verifiable rewards. They're cloning DoorDash. They're creating copies of Amazon.com.
Yeah.
So the future version of ChatGPT will let me order headphones or gongs or whatever I need for the show just within that chat interface. I imagine that if you're talking about some custom piece of logistics software, some internal portal, there's probably some things that you can get out of the box just by using frontier reasoning models and web browsers and agentic browsers. But what extra steps do you have to take to actually deliver a ton of value?
Absolutely. Let me give a little context. 100%, everyone's talking about enterprise AI agents and computer use and VLMs, but there's a gap between where those are at today and how that gets into productionized workflows, right, for enterprise companies at scale.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine that, for the first time, we have these models that can reason and they can act like humans. They can understand how these platforms are working, and we don't need to, build an integration or like an API connection into platforms in order to be able to do work on them. But instead, we can just, mimic the way humans do. Now, that said, if you've tried Operator or computer use agents or any of these models, they're pretty unreliable for individual tasks. And then you can imagine if you're scaling this up to hundreds of thousands of hours of real world work, it's going to be really tough to do so. And so what Sola does is we take an approach where we use a combination of deterministic as well as more deterministic non-deterministic automation and sort of change the abstractions on which things are built so that you are able to, for example, send a shipment across 5 different platforms reliably and at scale. And so we use these models, but also a whole lot of different architectures on top of that to make things very accurate and be able to plan and build guardrails around the processes that people have.
Did you start with a focus on logistics, or is that somewhere you ended up after talking with a bunch of different companies in various
After I
industries?
demanded a single example to dig into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, today we have workflows across a lot of different verticals.
Mm-hmm.
So Sola does finance workflows and KYC. Sola does healthcare workflows and enters data into EMRs. Logistics is a big part of that. I would say that the 2 biggest verticals that Sola has done a ton of work in today is logistics and healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
It's by no means where we started. Actually, our early customers were in legal and in healthcare, I would say mostly, and some insurance as well. But I think logistics just turned out to be an industry that we discovered a few months ago. Turns out there's a million perfect automations for Sola there. And today we work with a whole bunch of really large companies in the industry who are using it for all kinds of different applications.
What's been the employee reaction at the companies that you guys work with? I imagine a lot of these employees are stressed out, overworked, kind of, exhausted from managing all these different service areas. So my sense would be that they welcome a tool like this, but what's your read?
Yeah. For sure. I think that it really meaningfully changes the way people work. Like, for example, some of the companies that we operate at, we're saving people from doing the very boring copy pasting, very manual, repetitive work so that they can focus on sales and customer relationships and everything else that goes into their business. One of the customers that we work with, they do a few hundred million in revenue. We started working with about half a year ago, and their kind of famous data point is that they haven't had to hire a single person at their company since bringing on Sola, because they've just been able to do more with the same amount of people that they have on hand, and they can kind of scale the revenue of their business without having to scale headcount.
Yeah, I've heard that from a founder building in the AI roll-up space, and he's buying companies, and he's telling the management team, we're not like traditional private equity that's just going to like gut the company, reduce
We're focused
headcount.
on growth.
We're going to focus on growth, but we don't need to add a bunch of incremental headcount. We're just going to make you more effective.
Interesting.
So it's a great value prop.
There's a big kind of discussion online today about gross margins at startups. Can you walk me through the economic thinking of your buyer, your customer? How are they thinking about the value that you deliver and then your costs? Because obviously I imagine that these workflows use reasoning models. The token bills are probably significant, but you're delivering hopefully a lot more value than that. So how are people responding to the idea that okay, there's a company that has real variable costs with the amount that I demand, or the amount that I'm using this tool? Are they receptive to a consumption model? Are they receptive to price increases? What's the vibe been like from the AI buyer world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the most direct way to justify value is just how many hours are you saving, right? That's the most straightforward way, and the traditional way automation is justified. On top of that, for a lot of businesses, you actually see top line revenue lift. Like if you start powering their core operations, and they can just do more business. So it becomes a very different equation. And I think that's a lot of the ways customers see Sola on top of just time savings. In terms of model costs, it really doesn't make sense to, paying a computer use agent at every single step that you're doing. You can imagine that will get super costly. It will be slow. It will be unreliable. And so we have a lot of infrastructure built on top of that, so that the things that you don't necessarily need models for, that are very straightforward, we can just apply more traditional automation. And then areas where you need reasoning, you need flexibility, you need workflows to adapt, then obviously we use more models there. And so costs aren't crazy, and I imagine those will keep going down over time.
Fantastic. Well, congrats on the round, and congrats on all the progress.
Yes, hiring lots of engineers. We're based in New York. If you're interested, please reach out. We are growing very quickly.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Congratulations on the milestone, and we'll see you back here soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
We'll talk to you soon. And we have Parag Agrawal, the former CEO of Twitter.
The man, the myth,
in
the legend.
the Restream waiting room. He is launching a new company today, and we are pleased to have him join the show. Welcome to the stream.
What's
How are you
happening?
doing?
Hey, Jordy. Hey, John. Great to be here.
Great
so
to have
much
you.
to talk about. Let's start with the new company. I mean, I'd love your thoughts on live streaming on Twitter and X and all the things that we're doing. But let's stay focused on your company. What did you announce today? Should we ring this gong for you?
Let's do it.
Give us a breakdown. How are you describing the new company?
We're building parallels to build infrastructure for AIs using the web. Born out of this observation that the web was built for humans. We built Twitter. You're thinking about people in browsers and apps, and you're designing stuff for humans. And 2 years ago, as I was thinking around, like AIs are going to use the web, and that's going to be the primary user of the web. And it's going to be at massive scale, like 1,000x, 1,000,000x of what we've ever done on the web. And I think that needs new infrastructure, new business models. And that's what this company is about. Today, the product we shipped is our deep research product. Now I'll tell you more about it.
Yeah.
How long, when did you actually start the company? It sounds like you've been in stealth for a while.
Yeah, a year and a half ago. We've been building a lot of infrastructure in that time, a lot of infrastructure.
So talk about the first product, break it down.
We shipped a deep research API today. So you're users of ChatGPT and I'm assuming several deep research tools.
Yep.
We have an API product that any enterprise developer can integrate into their applications, into their workflows. Since we have reimagined the search stack as well as the technology for the web from the ground up, we can outperform OpenAI's deep research. we can outperform every leading model's deep research quality in terms of their benchmarks, others' benchmarks, and with real customers. And I think that's the product we've announced today.
So break down some initial use cases for the product. Let's say I have a SaaS company, like a vertical SaaS company. Is this and I'm building or something? I can imagine somebody's building SaaS for sales reps or a CRM provider. Is this something they would be running deep research style queries within the product?
Yeah, people do all kinds of things. So in the sales CRM context, right, there's a lot of people who have this massive current customer list, prospect list. They want to go, I wish I knew this about this customer. I wish I knew this about this customer. So they just add a bunch of data to have the CRM now have a lot of information that wasn't in there, but was on the web. And now it's in their systems, in their CRM. They're ranking based on that. They're prioritizing based on that. They're able to go do meeting assist, right? Before you meet someone, pull everything from my internal information that I have about the customer and our interactions with them, but also pull everything that's happening with their business, what they're talking about, what they're doing, what they're shipping.
How do you think about the Pareto frontier? I mean, Google's, I believe they have Gemini APIs and they have, and they've focused on kind of this idea of the trade-off between cost and quality of result, and intelligence is a function of cost ultimately. Where do you see pockets of value? Do you just want to go way further? Doesn't matter how much it costs, companies are willing to pay, or is there a different kind of angle on the Pareto frontier that you think is unexplored?
Glad you mentioned the Pareto frontier. I think we obsess about the Pareto frontier, but I think both are important. One, at every price point, you got to be the best. And then for someone who has no price sensitivity, you got to be the absolute best, right? And I don't think you get to do the one without the other.
Yeah.
The way we push is we first push quality and accuracy for use cases as high as possible. And once you can do that, you can do a lot of work to make it cheaper by trading off a little bit of quality out. And that's the motion you take on. But you got to be on the Pareto frontier for every use case to be operating at the scale that we want to operate at, which is every application, every workflow, anytime, everything should use AI.
Yeah.
And it's kind of silly to use
So how do you think about competition in the category? Are you competing with OpenAI's API? Is that the wrong way to think about it?
Yeah, and I'm interested in where do you see pockets of unexplored territory? Like, one of Google's advantages is that they have the TPU, but there are lots of new chip companies that offer different trade-offs for inference. And what are you excited about in terms of differentiation?
So one, we use models from OpenAI, Google, and we use several open source models in different places. We also train our own models. We build our own index, crawl, ranker, reasoner. And so what we are is a little bit of a complement to the best models if you're building AI applications. Now, of course, OpenAI does bundle a search tool with their API. And that we compete with and beat on quality. So we beat not just that tool. In fact, the benchmarks for the products we ship today, we beat humans doing hours of work through our deep research product, not just because we're cheaper or can do it faster, but we're more accurate for a bunch of workflows than hiring a bunch of people to do it, right? And that, I think, is really exciting. As we work with more and more customers, we're able to replicate that. And that's an amazing moment that we've found this year.
Do you think there's room for differentiation by finding a beachhead market that is a subcategory? I just imagine we've seen this with Harvey and legal, and there are obviously HIPAA compliance and medical. And we just talked to Jessica, and she was saying that they were a YC company. They tried a bunch of different things, did some healthcare, some legal, wound up in logistics, and had a bunch of luck there. Are there any glimmers of beachhead markets on the horizon for you?
Almost too many. So we're seeing a bunch, as you mentioned, CRM, sales intelligence, marketing. There's a bunch happening there. There's a lot of people innovating, and there are customers. So if you think about our customers are often vertical people who are in various markets. We have people
Sure.
doing science research on like papers published or on sort of clinical trials that are happening or the data coming out of those. We've like investors, like hedge funds to PE funds to venture funds using us because like information on the web is what gives people alpha, and people can be so creative and now can create like scaled programs for figuring out where to spend their time. Instead of doing one query at a time in ChatGPT, you write a script, you do 1,000 queries on our deep research system, you get better quality, and you figure out where you want to spend your time. And we even have coding agents that use our search tools when they get stuck.
Wow.
So if you're an agent, like it's just like, so instead of beachhead markets, I think it all converges in the way I see it, right? It's all agents out there. You can have an agent for sales, you can have an agent for investing, you can have an agent for choose your favorite industry. And every agent needs
horseback riding.
How's it been building, quietly out of the public eye? Have you enjoyed it?
A lot. Also, respect for founders. Like, I don't know, I ran a large company, right? I was at Twitter 11 years.
Yeah.
Being a founder, taking something from like nothing to having like a bunch of customers.
Is this your first startup?
It's my first startup.
Wow.
Figuring it out. Like, I'm massively unqualified for the jobs, but those are the only jobs you really want, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like, why would you want a job that you're qualified for?
The best.
Just got to figure it out.
I want to dig into a little bit more granularity. Obviously, it's launch week, but chat is asking us, what did you get done this week? Break it down for us.
This week, I got back on Twitter.
Let's
go.
Ring the gong. Ring the gong, Jordy.
We're hitting the gong.
We're hitting
it's
the
great
gong.
to see you back on the timeline.
Seeing Parag on the timeline. Congratulations on the launch. I think that's huge news.
And I don't know if you caught this. I think I almost broke Twitter.
Oh, really?
Like, as I was tweeting like this morning at like 8 a.m., I was like trying to get my tweets out for the first time like in years, right? And Twitter is glitching. Then I go on down detector.
Okay.
And it's
down.
like,
You might have brought it down.
And I was like, what timing, man? Like,
yeah.
I'm not going to take blame for this.
Timing a launch on the timeline is like one of the hardest dances you have to do. You can get steamrolled by a viral current thing. There's a ton of stuff that can go on. But it was a good day to launch. Yeah, and we're glad that you were able to make the show.
It could have been like a surprise DeepSeek launch.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you broke through, and we're very excited for you. So congratulations on the launch. Thank you so much for stopping by, and have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, great to catch up.
Have a good one. Bye. Up next, we have Eric from Bolt.new in the Restream waiting room. Let's bring in Eric. I'm very excited to talk to him because Bolt is launching a new business model. The margins on prompting will go to zero, and the company will make money from hosting websites and apps instead. I want to talk about it. How you doing, Eric? Good to have you on the stream.
What's happening?
Hey, good to be here, guys. Yeah, long time watcher. Good to be on the show.
Fantastic. It's good to have you. Introduce yourself, give us a little background on the company, and then I want to go into the business model questions because this has been top of mind for us all show.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so company's called Bolt.new, formerly known as StackBlitz. We're in the process of swapping the logo.
Got to get new merch printed.
We've been around for 8 years now. Okay. We actually just hit the 8-year mark 2 weeks ago. We were actually about to go out of business like a year ago. And so what ended up happening was we pivoted and launched Bolt, and in the first 2 months, we went 0 to 20 million of ARR, and was really one of the first text-to-app tools that came out.
Okay. So are you beating the allegations? 0 to 20 million, very impressive. What were the gross margins? Can you give us any insight here? Because everyone on the timeline saying anyone with a big revenue ramp, it's all suspicious. But give us a white pill.
Yeah, so our margins have actually been really good. So like typically it's been around 40%. Okay. And a big part of that is that for the text to app stuff, part of it is the inference where you're having the CodeGen AI model spit out code. But then you actually have to run it somewhere. And so that's like the technology we've been making for the past 8 years basically allows you to run full development environments in a browser using the end user CPU. So it doesn't cost us anything. Right?
Okay, got it.
That's a big part of why our COGS are a lot better.
Sure.
But for us, it's like, I think what seems to be inevitable is that margins are just going to go to zero on this stuff. And so we're kind of skating to where the puck is going. Because
tangibly, unpack that, because a lot of people are saying margins are going to go to 100%. Margins are going to go very high because inference is going to get very cheap. You're saying margins are going to go to zero. Break that down. Why would it go to zero? Is that just competitive dynamics from the competitors and the legacy companies and just all sorts of different competitive pressure?
I think it's really, yeah, good question. So, I mean, it's really like we could go and use the previous generation of models, but and charge users, what we're charging for frontier stuff. But the problem is like, you're not going to be able to build, quality apps, right? Because the frontier models and agents are incredible and they just keep getting better. And so the kind of if you're expecting to, as a company reselling inference, unless you're a model provider, your choice is you can either take a margin and give worse models than what are the frontier, or you're saying, hey, we want to always have the best, most capable stuff, and not take a margin, and instead, but what that means for your business though is that you have to be going and making money in other ways than just reselling inference, right? And so if you kind of look at the previous generation of site builders and hosters as an analogy, if you go to like Wix and Squarespace, they don't charge you to like build a website. It's free. Of course, you don't have to pay for AI or whatever, but like you can drag and drop. What they bill you for is to host the thing, right? And that's how they have a very healthy LTV and average customer contract length, et cetera, is that you have your website hosted, and that's the primary ongoing value that's being
people that have been kind of trying to track this market of prompt to site or prompt to app have the critics have talked about churn, but my read on it has always been that it seems like there's been a fairly healthy market of just website builders for a long time. It hasn't been monopolistic. You've got the Wixes, the Squarespaces, the Webflows, the Framers, and all those companies have been able to carve out solid businesses. And so, this launch makes a lot of sense, which is, hey, come on the platform, generate whatever you want. But then if you're generating a site, a marketing site for your business, we'll host it, for you indefinitely.
Yeah, exactly. And so it kind of move, like for us as a business, it moves the focus for us to having the best services and like workflows for the customers we're serving. So like that's for people building, hosting a website, that's hosting services. So we partnered with like Netlify and Supabase for powering the stuff that we've got today. And they've scaled this for, some of the heaviest products like Uber and Twilio in the past. So you can build like, to millions of people now with Bolt. And on the B2B side, we're selling to folks that are, basically replacing Figma with Bolt for doing prototyping and rapid product development. And that's just very sticky because you're working on a team, and it's for the same reason that Figma is a collaborative product is sticky. And so that's where we're focusing, because that's like, the retention is incredible on those use cases from our numbers, right?
Are you feeling acceleration, deceleration from the frontier labs on coding products? Lots of people were kind of, on the timeline at least, disappointed in GPT-5. It feels like it's more of a consumer product now, but in general, it used to be, every 6 months we got something that was completely breakthrough, and now the releases feel a little bit more incremental. But what are you feeling just from the foundation model lab side? Because we are seeing a lot of progress there. The benchmarks are improving. The context windows are getting bigger. Are we accelerating, decelerating, kind of in a rebuild mode, kind of rethink? You need to go back to the drawing board and do some AI research.
Yeah, I think for all the frontier labs, they should all they need to keep hitting more and more breakthroughs, right? Yeah. But from a on the ground perspective of a company like us looking at these models and running evals and measuring them, they're the models themselves may be seeing like maybe more incremental improvements. But what's really, I think, the big unlock is that not only are they getting better at just like coding, but they're getting better at being designed to be used as part of agent systems. And that's a huge thing, because if you think about how humans think, like if I asked you to like rattle off like, the latest financial numbers or something, it's like you might be able to like pull that up, but realistically you need to like think on it. You get some things wrong on zero shot, and you need to like kind of go do some research, bounce around. And so like that's what really agents are kind of replicating, in my view, is like how we as humans actually think and work. And so how do you really tune the models to be good at going down different thought paths, killing ones that don't actually look promising, et cetera, et cetera. And you look at Claude Code is probably the best example of this in the code generation world. And there's remarkable progress being made in that realm of things, right?
Yeah.
So it seems to me there's a lot of room to run just on incremental improvements on the zero shot aspect of models, but then also how these things are going and reasoning and working in agentic systems.
Yeah, the unhobblings. I think about like I'm sure that you don't vibe code a database every time someone builds a website. You pull a database off the shelf, and I've seen the stats of all the databases that you guys are pumping customers into. And so, as more of those tools roll out and you get more of that functionality off the shelf, and you can pull this from over there, pull that open source project, pull this data, like that feels like that unlocks a lot of growth. Very
Last
exciting.
question from my side for now. Gabe in the chat asked, "What are those champagne bottles in the background?
Yeah.
What's going on there?"
First time someone's asked about this. Yeah, actually, these are the first enterprise deals when we closed the first, because like we had never done enterprise sales motions before. Period. Like I've never been a salesperson. So my chief of staff and I, my CTO, when we closed our first kind of 3 major customers, this is like probably 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. We started with the $15 bottle of Cooks for the 20K deal we did.
Start somewhere.
Yep, that's good.
And then worked our way up.
There we go.
So those are like, those are the things I keep on the shelf.
What's the top tier bottle in the back?
I think the top one, I think it's a bottle of Dom.
There you go. That's probably $250, $350.
Yeah. I think someone got it for us as a gift or something. Maybe I can't remember what that was about, but that's like the I like never drink alcohol, but it's like that's
Let's hear it for some
empty
teetotaling
enterprise deals.
We love it. Good
excuse.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. We'll talk to you
great
soon.
to meet.
Have a good rest of your day.
Likewise. Thank you.
See ya.
Up next, we have Matthew from Merlin Labs waiting in the Restream waiting room. Let's bring in Matthew. He has some really big news. We're going to need a bigger gong, Jordy Hayes. How you doing?
Hey, guys. How are you?
We're great. How are you? Give us the news. Give us the update. Give us the introduction on you, the company, and then the news today.
Hey, guys. I'm Matt. I run Merlin. We're going to need a bigger gong.
We're going to need a bigger gong.
I'm seeing you ready with a mallet. Like, I'm here for it, like, especially at the end of the show. Yeah. So I run biased, like a really cool company called Merlin, where we're developing essentially a pilot, just not a human one. We are deploying that predominantly with the U.S. Air Force and a bunch of other partners and customers around the world. And we announced this morning that we're taking the company public, which is going to be the first time one of these big defense startups go public.
Let's go! Nice. Congratulations.
There we go.
I love it.
I was waiting for that.
Let's stay on the anatomy of the deal. What's actually happening from a mechanics perspective? What does it mean to take this company public? Where will you be listed? Do you have a ticker? Like, break down what's going on with the deal, what it means, and then I have a ton of questions about autonomous flight.
Yeah, 100%. So we were looking at a couple different options, and particularly for us, going public sort of efficiently allows us to do a bunch of things. Allows us to go build a lot more capital to go sort of execute on a couple big contracts that we're working on, but also allows us some currency to do M&A, which is important for us, especially as we sort of build up. So we talked to a lot of folks, and we're combining with Inflection Point. Inflection Point has done 2 other like really high profile deals, USA Rare Earth and then Intuitive Machines, both of which are trading at multi-billion-dollar valuations with hundreds of millions of dollars of cash in the balance sheet. And
let's go.
I love it. And then another big part of the announcement today is we announced like $120+ million of committed capital before we even announced the deal.
Yeah, so it's effectively like an investment in the company, although it'll happen after the merger.
100%.
Yeah.
So most companies, when they're going public, they raise their pipe between when they announce and when they go public.
Yep.
Based off the strength of the deal, we were able to pretty quickly raise about $120 million before the announcement. TBD, how much more money we'll take sort of pre-announce. But super exciting, and I think a really important moment for defense tech.
Got it. Talk to me about the value of autonomy in flight. We were talking to Delian earlier about this. There's the model for self-driving cars is very logical. Something like 70% of the cost of an Uber is the human driving the car. in the plane context, it's usually something like 7%. It's much lower because the fuel is very expensive. You only have a couple pilots. You have a lot of people in the vehicle. So how are you thinking about focusing on like fully autonomous versus pilot assistance technology? Kind of what's the equivalent of a level 5 self-driving, level 2 self-driving? How do you think about the progression to self-flying planes?
Yeah, I mean, well, Delian is captaining his Cessna. Extremely well.
But he might be joined by a co-pilot soon, right?
No,
he's gotten himself in some situations where he probably would have been better to let the co-pilot take over, but he's always made it through. So and we're grateful for that.
Situation. All right. So everybody thinks of an airplane with like 2 pilots, right?
Yep.
But if you're like FedEx or like big airplanes, I don't know what Delian's talking about, but like big airplanes, there's anywhere between 13 and 20 FTE pilots per airplane, making all in anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million a year.
Yep.
So if you're able to in the future augment that and go from 2 crew down to 1, that's billions of dollars of savings for the airline industry, which is super important. But for our military customers, getting that out there enables those pilots to go act a little bit more like mission managers, which is super important, particularly given that the Air Force is short pilots, which enabled our big contract that we announced last year, sort of a big 9-figure contract to go spearhead fixed-wing autonomy for certain parts of the Air Force.
What about the role of like not necessarily autopilot, but like just enhancing the safety of airplanes? I feel like that's just something that everyone should be excited about. Everyone's seen the different flight disasters. Everyone wants more airplane safety. They're definitely willing to pay for it. It seems like there's an opportunity to plug in, and I'd love to know about the different FAA pathways for what it means to actually pilot the plane via a non-deterministic machine learning based AI based system versus having an iPad next to you that's more just offering advice and diagnostics and acting as kind of just bringing like a centaur model, bringing super intelligence alongside a human in the loop.
Yeah. So for our customers, particularly our DoD customers, like bottom line, most people living today have lived in a world where America has been able to go project air power and like prevent World War III from happening for the vast majority of their adult lives. We are in a world for the first time ever where America does not, in the West, does not have the unilateral ability to go project air power and prevent World War III. So like, what we're doing and what we're building here of like getting autonomy out actually in an operational service, going from 2 crew down to 1. And then we're doing some uncrewed stuff as well with a few customers, like gets us to that point of like getting out of this like kind of toy iPad pilot assist, kind of like, I don't know, kind of like a BS solution, and actually going out and really operationalizing autonomy and like getting like millions of hours of operating history so that we can start to go claw back that lead against some of our peer adversaries.
Yep, makes sense. Jordan,
super important stuff. Come back on as this cycle progresses.
Yeah, we're very excited for you. Congratulations on the news.
Cool. We're going to need a bigger gun, guys.
Yeah,
we'll get it ready.
We're working on it.
It's actually in the works.
Hopefully, wherever it's manufactured, we'll fly.
So it's really
it's
a race against you guys getting out.
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll do our absolute best.
I'll be back, and we'll expect a bigger gun.
Fantastic.
Perfect,
we'll talk
Matt.
to you soon, Matt.
Great to meet you.
Guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
Breaking news. The Trump
news.
administration is said to discuss U.S. taking a stake in Intel.
Someone predicted this on the show. Maybe it was Aaron.
The Trump administration is in talks with Intel to have the U.S. government potentially take a stake in the beleaguered chip maker, helping support the company's effort to expand domestic manufacturing. The deal would help shore up Intel's planned factory in Ohio, who said the people who asked not to be identified because the deliberations are private, of course. The company had once promised to turn that site into the world's largest chip-making facility, though it's been repeatedly delayed. The plan stems from a meeting this week between President Trump and Intel CEO Lip Bhutan. The people said the idea is for the U.S. government to pay for the stake, and the details are being sorted out. One of the people said. Another cautioned that the plans remain fluid. So will be interesting to see here if this is taxpayer dollars or this like sovereign slush fund that we're getting from Japan and
make
other
NVIDIA
players.
pay for it. 15% of H20s. Put that money to work. Buy Intel. I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like buying Intel. It feels like I don't know. I mean, the U.S. government does own some companies like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were recently. They're the lenders for student loans or all sorts of lending that goes on. Those are nationalized. And so Trump was talking about IPOing those or spinning those
What do
out.
we got, Tyler?
Is this? Do you think this is bullish for Leopold? Situational awareness, big. Weren't they big Intel?
Oh yeah, that's huge.
I mean, Intel's
actually.
up 20% in the last 5 days.
Exercise those calls, Leopold. Let's go.
Bucco Capital has I got a post here. We'll use this to close out the show.
Okay.
Pull this up. Team, please.
You just drop it in the chat.
It's in the chat. Leopold Aschenbrenner today after
Ragov
being
says
clowned on literally.
Nationalizing Intel is a horrible idea.
State and resort skrilla. How we stalk killer. I stalk killers. Man, I caught killers just on.
We're gonna get demonetized for this.
Turn this off before we get demonetized.
No, we just got to talk over as it's playing so that the AI gets confused and thinks, oh, that's not a real song.
Anyway,
Intel. Fun hanging out with everyone in the chat. Thanks for watching, Gabe, Techno Chief, John Exley, Deepak, Raghav.
So many good usernames.
Thanks for watching. We will see you tomorrow.
I can't wait.
It's going to be
Friday
a blast.
episode. The mansion section incoming.
Is it really? It's already Friday? Wow. I
Hard
had
to
no
believe.
idea. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Leave us 5 stars on Apple
Cheers.
Podcasts, Spotify, and we